Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Give me some hearts if you can hear me, please. Please. Can you guys hear me? Give me some hearts if you guys can hear me, please. Let me know that you guys can hear me, please. There we go. Okay. All right. Facebook, can you hear me? Give me some hearts if you can hear me, Facebook, please. Facebook, you can give me some hearts. Let me know that you can hear me. It's a slow connection. All right, guys. So I wanted to talk just a little bit tonight about where we're at. It's been a couple of days since I've been on, and we need to get back up to speed here. So Uh, so eventually, I think that the story went that when David was against Goliath, I think that he probably went around and spent a lot of time trying to teach people about about God and his faith in God, and people probably listened to him. But eventually, he had to pick up that stone and go because no one was going to come and save him. So you know, we're just at the point here where we've got to do something, and you know, we know we're right. We know that the law is on our side, so we just are going to have to rely on it and have faith that it's going to work. Because sitting and waiting is not doing us any good. We got kids that are being stolen. We got properties being stolen. We got people that are being locked up. I mean, Sue's husband. If you're on here, Sue, her husband was just locked up for 15 years. Crime he didn't commit. Convicted on information, and so we can't just allow this to continue. So we've got to do something about it. So right now, you guys, there's still someone that's impersonating me. They're reaching out to you guys, letting you guys pretending to be me, offering to come and to your court case and help you guys. That's not me, you guys. It's not me. So there's someone that is still out there impersonating me and trying to get money from you guys. You guys are still donating to them. Um, Please don't donate to anybody that just sends you a message asking for money. All right. If you guys want to donate to the website. That way you guys can make sure that the money actually comes to the intended purpose. Okay. So please donate through the website. And if it's any cash app other than We Shall Be Free, that's not mine. It has nothing to do with what we're doing. This Vicky Tamaro or whatever her name is, that's not part of the church. So please don't donate to that person. So earlier today, Maureen asked a question. She has a daughter that's in prison in Iowa, I believe, and she's got an illness that's pretty serious, and she needs medicine, and that medicine needs to be administered every single day. And if it's not, then she could die without that medicine, and the prison is not giving her the medicine. Now, I think that you guys that have been in prison, you guys probably know that this is a common practice between the jail and the prison. So I wanted to respond to Maureen. I wanted to answer the question for her because she's wondering, well, what can she do about it? Now, what I'm about to tell you, it's not something that you can necessarily do. I want to give you guys an angle, something to think about. Okay. So when you go to prison, right, or you get arrested, all it is a guardianship. It's an adult guardianship. So the state is saying that you don't have the ability to be able to take care of yourself, and therefore the state needs to take custody of you. And through taking custody of you, now they have guardianship over you. They're responsible for your health, welfare needs, right? What name are they using? I'll come back to that, Daleen. So, so there's different types of guardianships. There's a child guardianship, like you guys have children. You're the guardian of your child, right? You're responsible for that child's health and welfare needs. You're responsible for making sure that child is taken care of. Now, you can also have an elderly guardianship. Your mother might be old. She might be having difficulty getting around, and you may take guardianship of her to be able to take care of her. So there's different types of guardianships. There's absolutely an adult guardianship, and along the same lines, just like there's child neglect and there's adult neglect, there's also neglect for these adults. So when you take someone into your custody, right, you have a custodial relationship. You're responsible for their health and welfare needs. Then that means that you got to take care of them, right? Which means that if I have custody of my child, and my child comes up to me and says, "Hey, Dad, I hurt my hand," and I say to him, "Oh, go fly a kite, and maybe in 2 weeks you'll have some medicine." I'm probably going to be in trouble, right? I'm probably going to be held accountable, and I'm probably going to lose my guardianship of that child because I'm not taking care of it. Now, same thing with my elderly parents. If my mom comes up to me and says that she's hungry, and I say, well, too bad, I've already fed you 2,000 calories. I'll feed you again tomorrow. I'm probably going to be in trouble, right, for neglect of an elderly individual. I will probably lose my custodial responsibility because I'm not being receptive to their health welfare needs. Guys, these adults are the same way. And so, when you consider, the requirements that would be necessary to have custody of a child, and how you have to take care of them, and their health welfare, their medical needs, their food needs, all of these things would still apply regardless of whether they're an adult or a child. It doesn't matter. So when the state takes custody of these adults and then presumes that they can treat them in the manner that they do, without taking care of their health and welfare needs, without giving them the medicine, um, I think that there's some pretty serious complaints that could be raised there. Certainly, some arguments under the custodial relationship, right? So I would uh, I would say, Maureen, that you want to look at guardianship, and you want to look at some of the avenues that they take to take away custody of a child from a parent or an adult, and and see if there's some way that we might be able to work backwards for them for their neglect of the adult individuals that they have in custody. So um, I'm sorry that's happening, but that's pretty common actually. They don't take care of the health welfare needs, and we know that. Like these medical groups, I think that there's one down in I want to say Alabama that just went bankrupt, and they're sticking the state with with all their costs. But anyway, it still is business. And speaking of business, I want to talk briefly here about the new administration, you guys. So don't get me wrong. I like what he's doing. I like what they're doing as far as the corruption is concerned, as far as the money is concerned, and trying to find where our money's actually gone to. And don't get me wrong, but I've been saying this for a few years now that government is not a business. But if we run government as though it's a business, then what's going to happen is that the decisions that we make are going to be based upon the best financial interest of the country, not what's societal interest of the country. And so the laws will be created in order to generate revenue because government's a business, and business generate revenue, and the way that they generate revenue is at the expense of the citizenry. So I think that we need to get away from the whole, business of government, and and make it so that it's there to take care of the people, because that was the original purpose of our government. It wasn't to generate revenue, but unfortunately, we're running it as though it's a business. So, you know, when we talk about what could happen here, I'm concerned about the administration. I'm concerned about the direction that they're going, because they're focusing on the business attributes of government, the money. And I think that before we can deal with the money issue, we need to start dealing with the societal issue. And so when the administration comes in and the first thing they do is sign an executive order expanding the public prison contract, the private prison contract with Geo Group and Core Civic, well, that's going the wrong direction. If we're talking about putting the Constitution back in its foundation, you know, the prosecuting attorneys are the ones that are responsible for choosing the correct charging instrument. And if they're the ones that are choosing by abusing their discretion the incorrect charging instrument, being the information and non-indictment as required by the Constitution, because they're relying upon an inferior state law, then those prosecutors all work for the executive branch. They're all part of the executive branch. They're all part of the enforcement element. Therefore, Mr. Trump could come in. He could direct his agents, all the prosecutors, to follow the Constitution, and thus change and go in a different direction. But if we're coming in and we're expanding the private prison contract, that's not going in a good direction for our case. That's not going in a good direction for what we're doing. So, I thought for a long time that we would have Mr. Trump behind this, and I thought that would happen because I thought he experienced this. Like, injustice has this profound effect on us, right? And it causes us to do things that would be inconceivable in either context, but we do it because we believe in something. We've seen it ourselves. That's why when in order to help others, we got to suffer alongside them. Because no one will fight for something that they don't believe in. So before you can actually be trained to fight for something, before I could do this, before I could come out and do these things I'm doing, I had to first go and see what was happening so I would believe in it, because I couldn't believe in injustice otherwise. So if I were to say to you that there was racism in the world, you really couldn't understand me unless you've experienced it. Or if I just say to you that there was um, that there was injustice in the world, you couldn't understand me unless you experienced it. So you actually you have to suffer alongside these people in order to come to understand, experience what their experience is, so that you can go out and you can fight for it. But the thing about injustice, it has this profound effect on us. And I don't know a single person who has experienced the injustice and not chosen to come and fight against it. I mean, it's just a natural response that that when you're oppressed, you're naturally going to step up and fight for those that you believe are also being oppressed. That's just what happens. That's why people come out of prison and they become advocates, and they're committed this for the rest of their life because they believe in something. Something has become real to them that wasn't real before, because it's part of their life. It's part of their experience. And so, that's the reason why I thought that Trump would get behind this, because he said during his sentencing that this was a witch hunt, and it was. It absolutely was. But it wasn't just a witch hunt for him. That wasn't just his experience. That's the same experience as 70 million other people. All of you that have been, a part of this unjust system, you're all aware that what happened to him is what happens to everybody, because every tyrant is exactly the same. Their MO is exactly the same. Their delivery might be different, but the tactic remains the same. So, once we're able to identify the specific procedural situation that they do, they're just going to train all the rest of their people to do it. And so now we can see, the repetition. That's why, the affidavit that I wrote is so simple and complete, and it's exactly the same no matter what state you're in, no matter what judge it is or what county you're in. It's all the same, because they've all been trained to do things in a very, very specific way. And once we know that way, then we can document it, and now we can actually show the exact same procedures are being followed regardless of what state you're in, what county you're in, who the judge is, who the prosecutor is. It's the same exact procedure. So, that's what we're looking for. But like I said, I mean, this wasn't a witch hunt for him. This is a witch hunt for every single one of us. And I hope that he would have seen that, and said, you know what, this is real to me now. I've seen it myself, and then chose to stand up against those or for those 70 million other people. Because the truth is, we don't know how many of them are guilty. We don't know how many of them actually committed the crime that they were alleged to have committed. What we do know is that the state didn't follow the rules, and the state bypassed the one thing that was in place to make sure that innocence doesn't suffer. And in doing so, we have a whole lot of people in prison that are suffering. We know it. We know it. And we can see it, like from the death penalty statistics. Like I said, of the 1,500 people that have been put to death since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated, 139 of them have been proven to have been innocent after they were murdered. That's a bad number. That's 7%. Of the remaining, another 186 were exonerated after being placed on death row. That means that they're factually innocent and released. So those two numbers, that represents 18% of the people that were on death row were factually innocent. Innocent. So, we know that there's an inordinate amount of people that are suffering in prison that either, one, are not guilty of the crime that they were alleged to have committed, because the prosecutor didn't get the other side of the story and just maliciously or overzealously prosecuted someone that they believed to be guilty based upon one single set of facts or one single set of alleged truth, or they were overcharged. The prosecutor just said, well, I'm gonna give you this offense, and it's gonna carry this punishment, and you just say, well, geez, I don't want to go to prison for 20 years, so I'll take it. But regardless, we don't know the exact condition of these people that are in prison. We don't know. And so, understanding that, then when the other executive order that the president signed when he came into office, where he was lifting the moratorium on the death penalty and now paving the way for the death penalty to start back up again within the federal system, that's also heading in the wrong direction, very much so. Because if we have innocents that are suffering, and if we're aware that there's a due process violation, a significant due process violation, such as there is today, the absence of the indictment by a grand jury. I mean, if we're aware of that, then signing and paving the way to start up the death penalty once again is going the wrong direction. Now, you guys, he was given this information 3 separate times, right? 3 separate times. Now, Whether or not he understood it, whether or not, that's not relevant, right? But what is relevant is that the people that he's got himself surrounded by are just more of the same people. I mean, they're all attorneys. It doesn't matter whether it's Cash versus Garland. They're still just attorneys. They still fundamentally have been trained to do things in a certain way, right? There's no new knowledge or expertise that's brought in, and so it's very difficult to presume that we're going to be going in a different direction when the people that are surrounding him are more of the same people. And so that's what I'm seeing right now, right? And I hope that he does get some additional knowledge, some new technical expertise, some new law understanding, because we don't get someone else in there and everybody surrounding him, Bondi and Cash, they're all attorneys. They all have the same knowledge base that they had before. So these attorneys, it's very very difficult to get them to accept the reality of what's happening here, because they've been trained to do things a certain way. They went through school, they were educated by whatever state they went through, and they were taught to do things a certain way. But if they were taught to do things a certain way because that's the way it's been done, but unfortunately the way it's been done is wrong, then they were taught wrong. And that would mean that their entire career they've been doing things wrong because they were trained to do it wrong. And that's where we're at, you guys. That's where we're at. You know, when the Supreme Court of the United States came out and decided that they can amend the Constitution through what's known as legal realism, which is the belief that the law is not based upon the Constitution being the foundation, but instead upon judicial decisions that derive from their own social, political, or public policy, that judges make the law, and they make it through their rulings, and then they call it case law. Um, that's an erroneous assumption, because here in America we did not delegate the authority to create law or to have any legislative power to any branch of government other than our own, the legislative branch. The people create the laws. We create the laws that we would be subject to. We didn't delegate the authority for the judicial branch or the executive branch to be able to have any legislative power whatsoever. The judicial branch makes rulings, not law. Rulings must be consistent with the positive law that the people create, because the judges are tethered to the positive law. So when they make a ruling that amends or changes or alters the law, then that would clearly be unlawful, unconstitutional, because it would be an overstepping of the separation of powers. It would be performing a duty that was not delegated to that branch of government. Therefore, when they do create such a law, right, and then they direct all the states and say, well, you know what, we made this law and now you can all follow it, and all the states just went along with it because early in our country's early years, they just accepted the fact that the judicial branch was this supreme authority, this is God over us, or whatever you might want to say. But regardless, the period of time between 1820 and 1910 was the period that legal realism was at its height, right? These were judges that said themselves that we make the law, we decide what it is, and they were making rulings that were intended to proliferate and advance their industry, the slavery industry. So, you know, we have to recognize history and see what was going on with history, and know that the things that we're fighting today, we're fighting, because that institution overstepped the separation of powers, decided to legislate from the bench, amend the Constitution of the United States by removing the fundamental liberties of the people and putting in its place their own rulings, right? Which now has led to the chaos that we're in today. the grand jury, the grand jury proceeding is probably the most important proceeding of all. It's way more important than the petit jury, as we can see, because without the grand jury, they're able to charge load, to add additional charges, to do all kinds of things that's going to create pressure, so that they can threaten you, intimidate you, and force you into an admission of guilt, right? So that they don't have to do the petit jury. That's why 98% of all convictions come by way of plea bargain here in America. 98%. That's 98% of all criminal defendants that don't even get to tell their side of the story. And that is an egregious failure of this justice system, especially when the trial of all crimes, with the exception of impeachment, has to be by jury, right? There's no other way to do it. The only crime adjudicated in any manner other than a trial by jury is impeachment, not any other crime. And that's what it says right in Article 3. So the grand jury is the most important proceeding, because what it does What it does is it places a check on the prosecutorial or judicial power. Okay, so an overzealous prosecutor could come in and say, "Well, I'm gonna accept, what my client, the accuser, is telling me, and I'm gonna say, well, this is the gospel, this is the truth, this, and they're going to present it to the court as though it's truth, and they're going to deny the other side the right to be able to confront those hearsay accusations that are against them by denying them the right to be present in the grand jury, and then in doing so, they're going to be able to secure whatever indictments that they want. That's why they say that you can indict a ham sandwich, because you can, because there's nobody there to counter the claims of the freaking prosecutor. You know, when the prosecutor only presents one side of a story to that grand jury, and that prosecutor is able to present evidence that wouldn't even be admissible in the petit jury. I mean, this is hearsay evidence that would not even be applicable during the trial, and they could present that evidence in order to secure an indictment for whatever it is that they want, whatever it is that they claim. Well, we've got a pretty significant problem here, because the whole purpose of that grand jury is to protect the accused from the prosecutor, from the overzealous prosecutor, and yet the prosecutors made the decision that they're going to, through a crime, through obstruction of justice, prevent the opposing party from being able to be present to participate in that proceeding. And of course, when government commits a crime in order to produce an outcome, that outcome is absolutely unlawful because it derives from an unlawful act. So this is why I thought that Trump was going to get behind this. I served the state of New York on his behalf. I served the Attorney General on June 6th on his behalf, and then I went back and I served the New York State Supreme Court on September 6th on his behalf, both of the times identifying the fact that he was not present in the grand jury to confront the accusations that were against him. And that was a criminal act that was committed by the attorney general when she conspired by him, or he conspired by him, between the accused, Stormy Daniels, to deny Mr. Trump the right to be present. And in doing so, that indictment doesn't exist because that indictment derives from an unlawful act, criminal act. You guys, you can't prevent a party from being present to benefit from the very proceeding that exists for their protection. I know that that's how it works. I know that that's what you guys believe happens, because 99% of the time the accused is not given the right to be present to confront the accusations against them. But just because that's what they do doesn't make it right. Same thing with this indictment issue. Just because that's what they do doesn't make it right. Just because the majority of people, are prosecuted by way of information doesn't make it right. Just because the majority of people are prosecuted by a plea bargain and not by a trial by jury doesn't make it right. If they were doing things wrong and headed down the wrong direction, and now they're just doing it wrong because no one has corrected it, or no one stood up to them, or then it still is wrong. And if it's wrong, then that means it's unlawful. So the right to be present in the grand jury, it derives from what's known as egalitarianism, right? Which is what our system of government is founded upon. It's the belief that all men are equal, therefore all laws apply equally. So in our system of government here today, the laws must apply equally to every single person. We know that. 14th Amendment says it. Article 4 says it. Any law that does not apply equally to every single person within our society would be unconstitutional. It would be an oppressive law, because oppression is laws that are created that apply unequally to one part of society and not another. So government can't create a law that says, okay, well, we're only going to apply this to this group of people over here because they're poor, and we want to oppress them. We're not going to apply it over here to rich people because they already pay taxes. We don't need to get any more from them. That would be unconstitutional, right? Laws must apply equally to every single person. Any law that does not apply equally would be unconstitutional. So the right to be present in that grand jury derives from that theory. Now, we know the 14th Amendment says that no state shall create or enforce any law that does not provide equal protection of the law. So if the state, such as the state of Washington, if they create a law that says that the prosecuting attorney could charge by information or indictment by their discretion, such as the state of Oklahoma did, or Georgia did, or Florida did, or California, there's a number of these states that said, yeah, prosecutor, you can pick and choose who gets it by your discretion. You can decide who gets information, who gets indictment based upon your discretion. Guys, that's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional because, first off, it's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, because what it's doing is it's permitting the prosecuting attorney to decide who can have a constitutional right and who doesn't. And that would mean it's being applied unequally, right? No prosecutor can make a decision as to this person is going to get an indictment. They're going to have the right to that, constitutionally protected, but this person is not. So regardless of whether they apply it unconstitutionally, the way that it's written, it's unconstitutional because it permits the prosecuting attorney to pick and choose who gets a constitutional right and who does not, which would clearly be a very simple violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Now, the other issue there is that what it also does is it directs the prosecutor to be able to break the law. So if the Constitution is a law that they're obligated, prosecutors are obligated to follow that law, and they're bound to do what the Constitution obligates them to do, then when the state creates a law that says, okay, you don't have to do that, then what that law does is it actually directs the prosecutor to break the law. Because if the prosecutor doesn't use an indictment and chooses to rely upon that impure state statute to charge by way of information, then they just relied upon the impure state law that permitted them to break the Constitution, to break that law. And you can't that would be an emolument violation. You government can't create a law that directs you to break a law. It can't be done. So we have that issue as well. Now the other issue is that prosecutor just so happens to be the attorney of the accuser, right? So someone calls up the police and says, "Yeah, this happened to me," and and that police officer, they take that information, they record it as though it's factual and truthful, and they submit it to the court as information, and they present it as though it's facts. They say, even in the affidavit from the officer, they say the following facts are truthful, correct, and accurate, and then they submit it to the court. But it's the officer that's swearing that all this information is factual, and yet the officer wasn't even a witness. So, we don't know if this stuff is factual. All we know is that someone said that it was, but that person never took an oath to swear that it was accurate and truthful. And more importantly, nobody ever went to the other side of the story and got their information, right? No one ever asked them their side before submitting this information to the judge, asking for this person to be arrested based upon one single side of the story. And so we have a lot of cases. You guys know this. We have a lot of cases where, where especially in family law, especially in divorce, and that's what happened to me. These spouses that they just want to get as much of the assets, the familial assets that they can, and so they make an accusation, and next thing you know, the other party is in jail and unable to rebut the accusations from the divorce proceedings because they can't attend it because they're sitting in jail, and they lose everything. And this is real common. I mean, they're losing every single thing in these divorce proceedings because they're not able to come out and rebut the accusations because one side has chosen to abuse the system in order to advance the civil matter, and that's pretty illegal. And so when the prosecutor represents the accuser, and then the prosecutor permits his client or their client to present their accusation in order to secure in order for arrest, but then they're going to deny the opposing party the right to be present to benefit from the very proceeding that exists for their protection. Well, that's a person in a position of authority treating two people in like circumstances differently because they're permitting the accuser to present the accusation, but they're denying the accused the right to be present. And in doing so, that would also be illegal because government cannot treat two people in like circumstances differently. That's an act of tyranny, right? Because tyranny is the unequal application of law by a person in a position of authority. So if the prosecutor has the authority to be able to make a decision and apply the laws to the people, going to permit one side of the proceeding, but deny the other side the benefit of the proceeding, well, that would be a tyrannical act. It would be government siding with one party and applying the laws unequally because one side, the opposing party, did not get the benefit of the very proceeding that exists for his protection. Now, Title 42 is the civil rights statute, right? Title 42 came out after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 1968. So after Brown versus Board of Education, the desegregation in the South, the overturning of Plessy versus Ferguson, after that happened, the southern states, Florida, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, they were refusing to desegregate. And so Congress had to come in and they had to actually create an act that would bind the judges to have to ensure that the people got the rights that they were entitled to. right? And that's really what the Civil Rights Acts were about, the 1964, 1968. It was Congress coming together and trying to find a way to enforce the the ruling that was put in place, the Brown versus Board of Education, the equal application of law, desegregation, and Congress is also realizing that at that point in time, a lot of our citizens were not being treated the same as other citizens, right? I mean, this was well known, and so they wanted to find a way to make sure that every single person, regardless of who they are, what color they are, what age they are, what race, that every single person is going to be given all of the rights that they're entitled to that would be enumerated and protected by the Constitution. Guys, that was the intent of the Civil Rights Act. Now, it didn't really work out that way, but Title 42 is the statute or is the act. Now, within Title 42, you've got a number of actions that would provide relief, injunctive relief. So 1983, 1986, 1985. Another one is 1981. Now, 1981 says that all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have fair and equal benefits of all laws and all proceedings. Guys, go out and read this yourself. Make sure that I'm right. So, so all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have fair and equal benefits of all laws and all proceedings. Okay. So you have to have equal benefit of all laws and all proceedings. And the Fifth Amendment, grand jury clause, it just so happens to be a law of the United States. Therefore, it is absolutely protected by 1981. Right. And then the grand jury is a proceeding that was created by the Fifth Amendment. Therefore, it must also be protected by 1981. So all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have fair and equal benefit of all laws and all proceedings. See, that grand jury was for the benefit of the accused, and they have to be present to benefit from that proceeding. And if they're not, then that would be a violation of 1981. Very, very simply, right? Because that is a person that is not benefiting from the proceeding that is there for their protection and benefit, and they're not receiving the protection of the Fifth Amendment either. So when this happens, right, when the Title 42 was put into place, in order to enforce those elements, right, in order to enforce it, we had to have enforcement statute that was created. So you have the civil side, which would provide injunctive relief for damages that would be incurred, but then you have to find an enforcement element, a Title 18 enforcement statute. This is where deprivation of rights under color of law comes into play. This is where conspiracy to deprive rights. This is where peonage, these other things all come into play because we had to create statutes that would actually be the backbone to enforce this. So, when the Civil Rights Act dealt with the government that was treating people unequally, right? Mayors and judges and law enforcement that were treating the people unequally because they weren't applying laws equally, then we had to find a means of enforcing that. So all of Title 42, the deprivation of rights under common law, the conspiracy to deprive rights, peonage, all of that applies to judges and prosecutors and law enforcement and all the government. Because the reality is that they're the only ones that operate under color of law. That enforcement statute doesn't apply to the people. So that's what we use to enforce, those particular civil acts, and those rights. So when government doesn't treat us equally, such as a prosecutor that denies the accused right to be present by permitting their own person to be able to present their accusation, then we have to bring in the enforcement statute, and that would apply, of course, to the prosecutor. So conspiracy to obstruct justice, which falls under 1981, it says that when two or more persons conspire for the purpose of preventing any party in any cause from participating in said cause, commits that crime. So when the prosecutor conspires by and between the accuser to deny the accused the right to be present, they just violated that statute, right? Two or more persons conspired for the purpose of preventing the accuser or the accused the right to be present in that proceeding, and as a result, that criminal act was committed. Now, again, when government commits a crime in the pursuance of an outcome, that outcome is automatically unlawful because only right can produce right, wrong will always produce wrong. So if you act unlawful at the beginning, then what you produce is going to be unlawful at the end. That's a maxim of law. Any act unlawful at the beginning cannot become lawful over time or by subsequent legislation. So if the first act of our system is to break the law through an obstruction of justice by denying the accused the right to be present by either not notifying him or suppressing it or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter how they did it. The fact that they did it is sufficient to establish the elements of the crime. The accused had the right to be present. The accused had the right to be able to confront those accusations, and government did not have the right to apply the laws unequally by permitting their client, the accuser, the right to be able to present evidence, but then deny the accused the right to be able to confront that evidence, because that would be an unequal application of the law by a person in position of authority. And by that criminal act, the indictment itself is unconstitutional. Trump's indictment is not lawful. It's not even valid. So if the indictment is not constitutional because a crime had to be committed in order to obtain it, then that would mean that the whole trial, the investigation, the money that they extorted from him, the jury decision, none of that exists, because the very first step, the arrest, the moment that they held him over for an offense without giving him the opportunity to be able to confront those accusations that were against him, nothing else matters. And that's the same with all of you, right? Same with all of you. You guys, if you were not present in that grand jury, which 99% of you were not, that was a crime was committed against you. Even if you did have an indictment, if you weren't present to be able to confront the accusation that was against you, because government chose to apply the law unequally between two members of society, the accuser and the accused, that indictment derives from an unlawful act, making that indictment unlawful, which means that the arrest is unconstitutional. And we don't got to talk about anything after that. Nothing. So once again, you guys want to talk about appeals. You want me to come out and appeal, and guys, why are we going to appeal when we can show that the arrest was unconstitutional, right? The moment that they held you over for an offense without giving you the opportunity to be able to confront the hearsay evidence that was against you in a fair, neutral proceeding in front of a fair, neutral decision maker, nothing else matters after that. That criminal act negates everything after that moment. So you don't go to the end and appeal, because an appeal has statutory limitations. You have a certain period of time that you have to do it, and there's certain limits that you have to ask the court to review it, through a writ of certiorari. But you don't the other direction. The other direction is a habeas corpus. It's a judicial relief, because you've been deprived of certain liberties through a deprivation of a fundamental right by a state agent, right? And therefore, you go to the beginning, and you go to the court and you ask for judicial relief to restore the original liberties that were taken from you without lawful authority. Show me where the indictment is that was lawful, that you guys used to lock me up. And 700,000 of you don't even have that. When you guys bring up that issue, you don't talk about the end, because nothing after the moment that they arrested you without having an indictment by grand jury, nothing after that matters. Nothing else matters. You are absolutely supposed to be at the grand jury. So there's another thing I would point you guys to, all right, and that is a case called Hurtado versus California from 1887. Now, Hurtado versus California is really important as well, because Hurtado versus California, that was the case that the United States Supreme Court actually used to deny the people of the United States the right to indict by grand jury, right? So the court came out in 1887 and said, yeah, California does something different. They charge by way of information. That's not an indictment, and that goes in front of a judge, not in front of a neutral, unbiased decision maker, 1623 of your peers. And that's okay. It's okay that California doesn't do it. And so what they did was they sided with the state of California's constitution, the imperial constitution. And in doing so, their ruling fundamentally amended the Constitution of the United States and removed that particular requirement, that obligation. But remember, Supreme Court of the United States has no authority to be able to legislate. They have no authority to be able to amend the Constitution, because the only way it can be amended is through the procedures established within the special amendment procedure of Article 5. Any other way would be an unconstitutional amendment to the Constitution. The judicial branch has no role whatsoever in amending the Constitution of the United States, and yet they did. They sided with the state of California and said, yep, California doesn't do what the Constitution requires, and that's okay. And so again, what they did was they removed Clause 1 of Amendment 5 that says that you are required to have an indictment by a grand jury before being arrested and held over for a capital murder crime. And they put in its place Hurtado versus California. And now Hurtado versus California became the law of the land. A judicial ruling was now the law of the land. And now the state said, oh, well, we don't have to do the indictment anymore, because the new law of the land is Hurtado versus California. And so then they went out, they created their own constitutions, their own imperial constitutions that said we don't have to do it, because they were following the judge-made rulings that erroneously and unconstitutionally amended the Constitution of the United States in a manner other than what's prescribed. Now, we know why they did it, because by removing the indictment by a grand jury, you can bring arbitrary and capricious allegations against someone, right? You don't have to have any evidence whatsoever. You can bring any arbitrary, capricious allegations against someone. And during the period of time in 1887, that was convict leasing period, guys, when they were rounding up all the slaves that were just released, putting them into the chain gangs, and forcing them down into the southern states to re-enslave them under the auspice of justice, calling them criminals now. And so they were convict leasing these people that were supposedly now free under arbitrary, capricious allegations, completely unfounded allegations. And they could only do that by removing the fair and neutral decision maker, the grand jury. So that's why they made that decision, was because if they're going to re-enslave all these people that they just supposedly set free, so that they can put them back down in these businesses, in these for-profit businesses, so that they can continue to enslave them under now the auspice of justice, they had to remove the grand jury, because without it, or within place, they would have been limited. They would have had to have had actual allegations of these crimes, and they would have had to investigate it, and so on. So that's the reason why they put it into place. There's no denying that. but but without it being in place, then what happens is that the prosecutor can pretty much do anything they want, right? They can bring multiple charges for the same offense. They can trump up the charges, and say, oh well, it's attempted murder because he had a shoelace on, and he could have choked the victim with the shoelace. And these are things that they would have never gotten. I mean, charges they would have never had they had an actual decision maker there that's going to review the elements of crime and say, oh no, you're not going to charge him with first degree assault when it's actually a fourth degree assault. And so that would have put that check on that prosecutorial power. But absent the grand jury, or absent the accused, the right to be able to confront the accusations that are against them and tell their side of the story, then that prosecutor has complete reign to say or do anything that they want. And like I said before, they have the ability to be able to use hearsay evidence. Evidence is not even admissible in the petit jury, in the regular trial, and they can use that in order to secure whatever indictments that they want. And so that's what they do. They'll load up on charges. They'll overcharge and get extra, so that they have an intended outcome. Right? They know that they want to enslave you, and they're looking for a year and a day or 2 days, whatever it might be. And so they're going to get a whole bunch of different charges. They're going to bring it to you, and they're going to say, you're looking at 30 years, man. All these charges. But I'll tell you what. All right. So if you plead guilty to this one, and we'll give you a year and a day, then we'll dismiss all these other ones. But if you don't, then we're going to apply all these, and we're going to ask for the maximum sentence. You're going to be going to prison for 30 years. I'm like, well, fuck, man. I don't want to go to prison for 30 years. And so you agree to do it. Even though that didn't even happen, you just agree to do it because of the power, the threats, the intimidation, the duress that they've inflicted upon you, because they have because they're overzealous and they've overcharged you, and now they're applying their power abusively through an abuse of their discretion. That's the purpose of grand jury, is to be there to provide this check and to make sure that prosecutors don't have the ability to do just that. You see, this has already been learned. I mean, even during the convict leasing days of 1880 to 1910, even when we came out of convict leasing, we were well aware of the need to have a neutral, unbiased decision maker to review the state's accusations to make sure that this person is actually, being charged accurately, or the crime was even committed. And that they're not just bringing arbitrary charges in order to, take down in a political opponent or some other situation. So the grand jury is absolutely the most important element within the process, and yet it was removed. It's been removed for the entire existence of our country. It wasn't just 1887 when the grand jury was removed. It actually goes back to 1833, and in the Marshall Court, no one has had the right to the indictment by grand jury ever since 1833. And but going back to Hurtado, the thing about Hurtado is that even though that case was the case that the Supreme Court used to say no, we don't get the right to indict by grand jury, that is also the case that if you read it, they go through and they describe the process that happens within the grand jury. And so they say, yeah, that what California is doing, it functions the same way, right? But it's a judge, and not 1623 neutral and biased jurors. And so what they say that right in the ruling, they describe the whole thing, and they say that the accused is present. The accused has the right to counsel right? Being there. And the accused has the right to call and cross-examine witnesses because the accused was supposed to be present in that grand jury. And Hurtado describes it. It says, yeah, the accused is present in the California's proceedings. The accused is present, and they have the right to counsel, and they have the right to call and cross-examine witnesses because the accused was always supposed to be present. And so the very case that the Supreme Court said we don't get it, they described what the process is that we're supposed to get, and it's nothing like what we get today. You guys aren't present in your grand jury because they have misconstrued this process, because they've skewed it in their own direction in order to advance their case. You see, this is a First Amendment freedom of speech issue, because you see, government is supposed to be content neutral with regard to matters of speech, meaning they can either favor nor disfavor one party or another. Therefore, government cannot hinder or obstruct free speech in order to control the narrative. That would be a First Amendment violation of the most basic sort, according to Justice Kennedy in 2010. So if government decides that they're going to permit one side of a story to be advanced, and then they're going to, through an abuse of their discretion, through an intentional skewing of the disposition, they're going to deny the other side to be able to present their evidence, that would be a freedom of speech issue of the most basic sort, because government is favoring one side over another. They're denying the other side the right to be present. Witness intimidation, there's witnesses on both sides, right? Prosecution isn't the only ones that has witnesses. No, the defense has witnesses too, and all witnesses are protected, not just the prosecutor's witnesses, but even the defendant's witnesses. So if you were to call up the prosecutor's client, right, the accuser, and say to them through an abuse of your power, "Hey, I will shoot you if you come and testify," you're going to go to prison for that, right? Yeah, for witness tampering, intimidation, because you are preventing them from being able to present their evidence freely, fully, and truthfully to the matter pending before the court. That would be a violation of the rules of evidentiary procedure. So if it's a crime for you to prevent them from coming and being present to present the evidence that they have, then how is it any different when the prosecutor, through your defense attorney, says, well, you tell your client that if he comes and testifies and tells his side of the story, I'm going to send him to prison for 30 years. It's the same thing, right? And so there is witness tampering, intimidation on both sides. You don't just protect one set of witnesses, you protect both. So when the prosecutor, directly or indirectly, commits a threat to prevent that side from being able to be present to deliver the evidence freely, full, and truthfully to matter pending before the court, that is witness tampering, intimidation, all day long, right? Prosecutor can't do that, directly or indirectly. It doesn't matter. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but who gets to decide whether or not it's intimidation, right? I mean, I got to prove it's intimidation. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're the only one that knows whether or not you've been intimidated. The judge can't say, well, show me your intimidation, like it's a scratch on your arm. No, intimidation is an inward manifestation, not an outward. If you were intimidated by the things they said because you didn't want to go to prison for 30 years and you pled guilty and entered into a contract of guilt because of the threats and intimidation and coercion and duress that they inflicted upon you, that is unconstitutional. It is illegal. It's a crime, right? It's extortion. It's formulating a contract through use of duress. It doesn't matter what the threat is. If I'm a robber and I point a gun at someone, I say, I'm going to shoot you if you don't give me your money. It's no different than using the threat of prison in the same manner. I'm going to stay in prison for 30 years if you don't do what I want you to do. So we got to protect witnesses. This is a substantive issue. And when we don't protect witnesses, then we have a breakdown of the whole system. We have dishonor to the whole system, and that's where we're at. 98% of all criminal defendants don't even get to tell the side of their story. And that is the egregious failure of the justice system. That's what we're fighting against, right? People want to look at what I'm doing, and they want to presume that that I'm doing this to get a whole bunch of people off on whatever it is. I'm not doing. I'm trying to get us to understand that we cannot permit the erosion and degradation of the liberties from one side simply because we want to secure what we believe is a judgment on the other side. Every single person has the right to be able to a fair and neutral proceeding in front of a fair and neutral decision maker to present their side of the story, and be presumed to be innocent until they're found guilty. That's the system we're supposed to have. And so when we just look at someone and say, well, I think that guy's guilty, and I'm not going to allow the system to work, and I'm going to permit the prosecutor, or the judge, or law enforcement to overstep what their limits might be simply because we want to secure that judgment because we know he's guilty. That's not how the system is supposed to work, right? So we've got to give everybody a fair process because truth will always lie somewhere between two swords. So when we permit one side to tell theirs, but we do not permit the other side to tell theirs, we can't say that truth has been ascertained or justice has been administered. So we're in a situation today where we don't know who's actually guilty. We don't. Like, we don't know what anybody did because you all know as well as I do how the system builds an illusion of you and presents you in a very specific light, and then through these deprivation tactics they actually make you become that very person, right? I mean, they'll say that you're a deadbeat husband, right? And you never provided for your family, which isn't necessarily true. It's not true, but through their deprivation tactics they're going to put you into jail. They're going to make it so that you can't go get a job, right? They're going to make you lose all of your property. You're going to be in jail and you're not going to be able to make your house payments. So you're going to lose your house. And next thing you know, you're going to come out and you'll have nothing. You can't take care of your family because of the tactics that they put into place. They made you into the very object that they say that you are so they can justify their acts of oppression against you. So the system creates the image of you. And then through these tactics, they will make you into the very object that they say that you are. They say that you're abusive or violent, then they're going to put you into a place where you're going to learn violence because of the fear, intimidation, and all these other things that's going on around you, that will actually cause you to become a violent person. And that's what the prison and jail does. So um, so it's creating the very object that it goes out and fights against in order to justify its war on crime. And so there's a better way to deal with these issues, especially with the issues of aberrant behavior, such as a Marine's daughter. Marine's daughter, she had a drug offense. Right? She stole some property from Walmart. You know, she didn't hurt anybody, but herself, right? And yet she's in prison for 10 years doing it, right? And she's also dying of an illness that they're not even treating her with the medicine that she's supposed to be treated with. So, the truth is that that's aberrant behavior. That's not violent behavior. That's not dangerous behavior. That's behavior that exists because she wasn't given an opportunity because she has 90,000 limitations on her ability to go out and get employment, right? That's because she's been led to believe that there is scarcity because she doesn't have, money and income, that she has to steal her food. That's the person that we can help and not send off to prison. That's the person that shouldn't be there. She should be home with her mother, and the vast majority of people that are in prison are the exact same way. We know that 78% of people in prison never hurt anyone but themselves, just drug related offenses. Those are not people that are dangerous to society. We also know that that of the remaining, only about 4% of them are actually a danger to society. 4% of them, and that's according to top criminologists that across the world. Um, because most of those other people are property related offenses. These are people also that are aberrant behavior, not dangerous behavior. And so when we look at, when we look at the issue of morality, right? When we look at the issue of morality, we have to understand that that is not a matter of punishment. It's not something that we punitively deal with and address. It's a matter of public health because aberrant behavior is simply, not being taught the right direction or not being given, the same opportunity because the laws are not applying equally. If we're going to say that we're free, right, then how are we placing 90,000 limitations on the employment of these people that have already paid their debt to society, right? That were already trained to be able to do certain things that they can't do when they're not enslaved. These are tactics and programs that are terrible. When you consider that once you become a felon, right, there's two things that the system takes away from you. One is your right to vote. The other is your right to bear arms. Now, guys, don't think that those were just arbitrary. No, those are with absolute intention. Because if you're being oppressed, the only way that you can rise up against your oppressor. All right, I'll take it off here. So the only way that you can rise up against your oppressor is either one, democratically, or two, militarily, right? But if you take away the right to bear arms, you just took away the right to rise up militarily. You take away the right to vote, and now you just took away the right to rise up democratically. So those two things that they take away from every single person that's become aware and awoken to the true oppression of the system, they've taken away the two things that they need to be able to rise up against those oppressors. They can't do it. Those were tactics that were designed and intended to be able to keep the people in a state of oppression. Absolutely. They're not with good purpose or intention. So if we live in a society where the laws are to apply equally, right, then we can't put 90,000 limitations on this group of people here on their ability to go get a job and then expect them to be a member of society, productive and not out stealing stuff because you have put them into a state of scarcity, right? You're limiting their ability to be able to go and have a life and in Maureen's daughter's case, there's a better way to deal with her issue. Let's help her out. Let's help her have a place to live. We have plenty of resources to be able to do that. And the same thing applies to the other 89% of the people that are in prison. Let's look at a better solution, because once again, the matter of aberrant behavior, of moral behavior, is a matter of public health. We can treat it through public health. We can treat it as though it's an issue of trauma, and treating the trauma so that hurting people no longer hurt other people. The other ones are a danger to society, and yes, we will have to deal with them in a different way. But the healing of this trauma starts with the family. That's where you get healed. So when you remove someone that is hurting from the one source of their healing, um, and then you expect them to go away and come back healed, it doesn't work that way. We've got to restore the familial unit. That this whole thing has to be done as the restoration of the familial unit, and uh, we have to make sure that all these children, regardless of how old they are, whether they're a 5-year-old child or a 50-year-old child, it doesn't matter. Every single one of them is someone's child, and these mothers and fathers want their children back, and we need to make sure that happens. So it doesn't matter how old they are. Every single person in prison is someone's child, and they're all part of a guardianship, and we need to get that individual back to his family where they can get the love and support and healing that they need, so that they can no longer have the monster that exists because the system is creating the trauma and removing the one thing that they need to be able to heal from that trauma. So we need to reinforce the familial unit, and we need to get these children back home to their families, right? And if they're a danger to society, remember, I'm not advocating the release of dangerous people out in public. But we need to know if they are a danger. If they are, then we can address it in a different way. But if they're not a danger, then we need to get them back home, right? Because the purpose of prison was not to just send people there so we could force them into involuntary servitude, so we can put them into labor in these for-profit businesses for the direct benefit of the state. That's not the purpose of prison, right? The purpose of prison was to protect society from people that are a danger to society. And property theft is not a danger to society. Drug use is not a danger to society, right? What's a danger to society is government believing that they can enslave people in the United States, and has done it at a rate of 80% over the last 30 years, and then blame the people for the crimes of government. That's dangerous behavior, very dangerous behavior. All right, so again, going back to the business, our government is in the business of making slaves. That's the product that our government makes. So if we run government as though it's a business, then the product that this business is going to make is going to be slaves, right? Because that's what three branch government does. One branch to create laws, one branch to enforce laws, one branch to administer laws. So at the heart of our government is the business of slavery, the business of justice. And so as a result, when we run government as though it's a business, don't be surprised if we end up with our business leaders focusing on where is the money going, and not where are the people being deprived, right? Because if we're going to put the Constitution at the foundation, we don't need to worry about the fucking money. Money doesn't matter. Fuck the money. We'll deal with the money later. First, let's deal with the Constitution. Let's deal with the people's rights. And this is exactly the same problem that I had just a couple months ago or a month ago when I was in D.C. and I met with the senator of Oklahoma, Mr. Mark Wayne, right? And then right after him, the senator of Michigan, Mr. Britt. When I sat down with Mr. Mark Wayne's senior counsel, and I said to him, hey, Oklahoma has enacted a law that abridges the fundamental rights of Mr. Mark Wayne's constituents, by depriving them of the right to indict by a grand jury. He said, yeah, but that's a state issue. Right? We don't get involved in state issues. And I had to explain that no, that's not. That's a federal right that the state is abridging and denying his constituents that fundamental right. That's a federal issue, not a state issue. States already foreclosed on that particular issue because they created a law that abridges it. So, Mr. Mark Wayne and all of the congressmen and senator for that matter, they need to take this particular thing I'm about to say to heart, okay? And that is that if you do not stand up and defend the Constitution of the United States, if you don't stand up and defend Article 1, then by your failure to defend it, you will have ceded your power to the state. If you're not willing to stand up, Mr. Mark Wayne, and defend Article 1, which is the part of the Constitution that gives you your powers, you have no more power. The Constitution doesn't matter. You're not a senator of anything because without the supremacy of the Constitution, without you ensuring the sovereignty of Article 1 and you preserving your job, you don't have a job. You will have just ceded it down to the state because if the states are able to legislate and to alter the Constitution of the United States, then that means that the state senators are way more powerful than you are, Mr. Mark Wayne. So you need to step up and you need to take action to preserve your job, or you're going to lose your job by your failure to take action. So don't just say, "Oh, that's a state issue. States can amend the Constitution of the United States." Because if that's what you're going to say, then you don't have a position anymore. You have no power. You will have just given it away by your failure to take action. The same applies to the Supreme Court. Guys, if the Supreme Court doesn't step up and assert its supremacy and make the state courts and the state judges obey the very edict that they have to obey, by their failure to take action, by their cowardness, right? By their not having a backbone and unwilling to do their job, they will have ceded their power down to states. They will have made the state courts more powerful than they are. Because if the state courts can take away rights that they cannot take away, means the state courts are more powerful than the Supreme Court. So, they have to deal with this. And if they don't, they're nothing. They're nobody. They have no power. Because if they don't defend the Constitution of the United States and they allow it to be destroyed, the only thing that makes him a senator of the United States is that Constitution. Absent that Constitution, he's not senator of anything. But with Mr. Mark Wayne, when I pointed this out to him and I said, no, this is a federal issue and you need to address it because the 14th Amendment says that you guys have the power to enforce. It's the violation of the 14th Amendment is the only time that Congress enforces the law. Normally it would be the executive branch. But in the case of the violation of the 14th Amendment, it shifts enforcement. It says that Congress shall have the power to enforce this article. It's the last provision of the 14th Amendment. So when they have a duty constitutionally codified to enforce any abridgment of the 14th Amendment, any violation of the 14th Amendment, then that means that they have to deal with it. That's their job. It's their constitutional obligation. When I pointed this out to the chief counsel, he said, "Oh, well, you're right. That's a good argument." He said, "But you know what? That's pretty low on the totem pole. What's more important is we got budgets, we got finances we got to deal with." He said, "Maybe if you give me a position paper, maybe I'll be able to get it on the boss's desk, one of these days. But we got more important things to do. We got budgets and finances that we got to deal with." So what he's saying is that the fundamental constitutional rights, the enumerated rights within the Bill of Rights that are entitled to every single person within America, including those constituents here in Oklahoma, tens of thousands of them, in fact, being deprived of this very right that I'm bringing up here, that's low on the totem pole. That's low compared to budgets and finances. So again, budgets and finances deal with the business, right? So what is the motivation of these fucking politicians, right? These senators, the business. Where's the money? What are we doing with the money, right? Well, who cares about the money? What I care about is the fundamental rights that are enumerated within the Bill of Rights and how they're being deprived of the people of the United States by these states, and that you, sir, don't give a shit about that. That you think that that's low on the totem pole. That maybe you might be able to get to that at some point in time. That's not okay with me, right? And that's what the people of the United States need to hear. That's why I'm praying that we get some money soon so that I can go out and I get some real camera equipment, right? And I can go out and I can have these real discussions. You guys can actually hear the things that these people say to me because you guys would be appalled at the shit that I fucking have heard, right? I mean, from these people. But we need to show that this is what motivates them, right? You have fundamental rights that exist to preserve your liberty, right? known as due process. And the very first step, the state decided we're not going to do it. Right? State of Oklahoma created a law, Article 2, Section 17 of its inferior constitution, that says, prosecutor, you don't have to do an indictment by grand jury. Right? Said it by their discretion. So, Mr. Mark Wayne, you've got tens of thousands of your constituents that are being deprived of the fundamental constitutional right that's written and enumerated within the Bill of Rights. Everyone can see it, and you say to me that that's low on the totem pole compared to the business, compared to the budget, compared to money. Well, the problem is I don't give a shit about the money, you guys, because the money doesn't matter. What matters is what the people need. And I'm praying that this administration is going to step up here, because I don't think that that he's being truthful when he says he's going to place the Constitution at the foundation, but then on day one he decides to expand the private prison contracts. That he decides to lift the moratorium and permit the executions to restart here in the federal domain. That's a person that did not experience what I thought that he experienced. Injustice has a profound effect on us, and apparently didn't have a profound effect on him. Because if it did, he would have stood up and said, these 70 million people that you have witch hunted in the same way that you did me, I'm going to stand in opposition. I'm going to stand here, and you're not going to go after them anymore. Right? That's what should have happened. And it didn't. And instead, we see now an expansion of the contract for the private prison system, the Geo Group, Core Civic, and CCNA, these companies that are traded on the New York Stock Exchange that operate and proliferate in the business of enslavement of the people of the United States through an act of deprivation of due process, because, of course, that's low on the totem pole, according to Mr. Mark Wayne and Mr. Britt, and the rest of these senators who are absolute crickets. Because you don't go around the country right now. You don't go around the country serving 37 state attorney generals and 37 state Supreme Courts, right? Serving the United States Attorney General, serving the Senate. You don't go around the country doing that and not have people know who you are, right? They know exactly who I am. They know exactly what I was doing, right? And to just ignore it now, I don't know. You guys are going to have to make your own conclusions to that, because this isn't about politics. This is about just simply words and actions. You can say one thing, right? But if your actions are contrary to what you say, then I'm going to say you're a liar. Okay. So I want you guys, you can't hear me? Can't hear me now? All right. So I'm going to say that if your words and actions don't align, then you're a liar. And when you say that you're going to place the Constitution of the United States back to the foundation, and then you're all right. Can you hear me now? No sound? Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now? All right. All right, good. Okay, so again, I just want you guys, to think about it yourself. This isn't about politics. This is about motivation, right? And what is driving us? Because I've said this for years. If we treat government as though it's a business, then we're going to make the wrong decisions, because government's not a business. So we don't want government to focus on what is in the best fiscal interest of the country as opposed to what's in the best societal interest of the country. We want government to be concerned about what is in the best interest of the people. And we don't care about the money, because the money's worthless anyway, you guys. It means nothing. What's more important is what's right for the people. And if the direction we're going today, right, is resulting in the mass incarceration of our citizenry, right, because we're removing the one thing that's in place to protect them, when we're permitting government to create an environment where crime can be created in these drug task forces and so on, when we do this and then we lead the people in that direction so we can imprison them and enslave them, that's not going the right way. That's not in the best interest, the societal interest of the country. That's not what is in the best needs of the people. That's what's in the best needs of the business. We're going the wrong way, because government's not a business, and that's what I've been saying. And so, I like what he's doing. And I want him to continue to do that, because we do need to have an understanding of who can be, who can be trusted and who cannot. But I don't think right now that I don't trust anybody within that government, because I personally have interacted with them, and I've seen from my own eyes that not one of them is willing to step up and do what's necessary to help the people of the United States and to fulfill the honor that they supposedly have, and to do what they promised that they would do. The Constitution is only 4 pages, you guys. But if we're going to spend all our time looking at the money, guys, the money doesn't even matter. It's worthless. It's nothing. It's debt. And so what we're spending our time on right now, yes, it seems like it's a good idea, but it's not going in the right direction, because that's the business connotations. That's the budgets and finances, and the rights of the people. That's pretty low on the totem pole, right? And then we wonder why Mark Wayne makes those statements, because Mark Wayne also is being led by someone, right? So when our leader is leading us in the direction of, the fundamental rights of the people is pretty low on the totem pole, what's more important is budgets and finances, then Mr. Mark Wayne is going to follow him. He's going to follow his leader, and he's going to go that direction. And then we're going to be sitting here going, well, wait a second now. What about these tens of thousands of people who have been deprived this right, who we don't even know if they're guilty, and yet, they're having their children stolen from them, property stolen from them, and, and accusations being brought against them by the state as the accuser without any evidence or right to be able to confront that accuser. But that's the one totem pole, because we need to make money. What we need to do is we got to put the Constitution back in its foundation. And in order to do that, right, what scares this business, right, what scares this government is the fact that they're going to have to back out of every single thing they've done for 180 years. Nothing that this government has done for 180 years has been lawful. And they put into place all kinds of things to try to cover that up, to make it so you guys don't know about it. Everything from the Judicial Reform Act that directed us that the only way we can petition the Supreme Court is through writ of certiorari, right? And that the Supreme Court is a court of discretion, that they can pick and choose what cases they want to hear, not hear, even though they're not, according to Article 3. The thing is that this government has known about this. They've known about it, and they put into place for years different things to try to patch this together, to try to hide it from all of you, so that you guys don't know the truth of the oppressive nature of this government. And so the only option we have here is, one, we permit government to continue to act unlawfully, in which case, when is it ever going to end? We can't back this out incrementally. We're going to make a little tweak here and a little tweak there. No, man, because whatever they're doing today is unlawful. And so if we permit them to continue to do business, because we want to do it incrementally or whatever, they're still breaking the law. We're still permitting them to break the law. So if you're doing something wrong, right? If I'm constructing this car wrong, I'm putting the bumper where the tailpipe's supposed to be, right? And I'm not putting the car together, but then I'm like, well, you know what? I've done too many of these already. I don't want to go back and have to fix them. So we're just going to continue to do it this way. It still is wrong, right? I'm still constructing this wrong. And so it doesn't matter how long it's been done. It doesn't matter how many times it's been done. Wrong is wrong. And what they're doing is wrong. So when you realize that you're doing wrong, the only choice you got is you can either stop right there and not continue to do it wrong and start doing it right, or two, you can incrementally back out, in which case you're still doing it wrong.
And if you have knowledge that you're doing it wrong, now you can't say, well, I didn't know. They can't say, well, you know what? I think for a long time that they were ignorant, just like we were. I mean, you know, people weren't talking about the grand jury up until, a couple of years ago when I brought this issue forward. Nobody was talking about grand jury. Nobody even knew anything about it. Nobody challenged this bullshit. No one had questioned why am I not present in grand jury, to confront the accusations against me. It wasn't questioned. It was just accepted that this is how we do business, right? Which is the exact same response that I get every single day from every attorney that I talk to or judges I talk to. They say, oh, well, that's just the way it's done, and they're trying to justify their actions because they don't want to have to admit that, holy shit, everything I've done is unlawful. I've never followed the law. Nothing I've produced my whole career is valid because I was trained to do it wrong. And I just accepted that this is the way it's done. But again, wrong is wrong. If you're committing an unlawful act at the beginning, it cannot become lawful over time or by subsequent legislation. There's nothing that they can do now to justify or to make lawful all of these unconstitutional convictions. So their only choice is they stop. Do not do another fucking thing. Don't prosecute another single person until you know how to do it right. Because if you don't, then you're still going to produce it unlawful. It still is unconstitutional. So we have all these people that are unconstitutionally convicted, and nothing that government can do can create a constitutional outcome. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't follow the Constitution. So every single thing they produced is unconstitutional. So, if they're going to expand the private prison contract, right? If they're going to lift the moratorium and start permitting the execution of federal prisoners to start again, that is not taking this issue seriously. That's going the wrong direction. Wrong direction. Summary judgment is unconstitutional because that's it depends on what it is, but that's the judge making a decision on his own. The judge is not supposed to be the decision maker. The judge is supposed to be the arbitrator, right? That's why trial by jury is supposed to be the way. A bench trial is not valid either because the judge is not the decision maker. The people are. That's why in the Constitution, the only branch of government that can create a tax against the people is the legislative branch. We didn't want a system government where the king's agents, the judges, or the judicial agents, or the king's agents, the prosecutors and the judges. We didn't want a system government where they could create the tax against the people, like England had. We wanted the people to decide whether or not a debt is owed to the people. And in the courtroom, the legislative branch is represented as the jury. So when you create a tax against the people, a debt against the people, a debt that's owed to society, and thus you bring charges against his account so that he can pay that debt, which is the whole justice system. Well, if that debt or if that bill is created by a branch of government that doesn't have the authority to create the bill because only the legislative branch can create it, and thus if a prosecutor creates it, that would be the executive branch creating the debt, or if the judge creates it, that would be the judicial branch creating it. That's a branch of government that does not have the authority to create a debt against the people because all the debt and tax must be created by the legislative branch. Therefore, when the jury does not create the debt that's owed to society, that would be a debt that would be created by a branch of government that does not have the authority to create debt. The jury has to be the one to establish the debt and confirm the debt. People have to be the ones to decide whether or not a debt is owed to society. Otherwise, it would be a branch of government that does not have authority to do it. That's why the jury has to go through the process. The jury, the grand jury, the people decide whether or not a crime is even committed, right? And then the jury decides whether or not the debt is confirmed, right? And the tax is applied. If you don't have that process, then the debt is being incurred and executed and applied by a branch of government that does not have authority to do it. So there isn't a justification, right? And that's why I say, I've got videos out there. You guys have seen it. I've been appealing to the Supreme Court's good nature. I mean, I read the memoirs of every one of the justices. I've read the books. I read Justice Roberts' book on standing. I know these guys. I know them really well. I know the buttons to push. I know the things that bother them. And the thing is, I've been appealing to their good nature. I've been trying to get them to understand that hey, You guys are doing it wrong, and the people of the United States, we would welcome you back. In fact, I believe that they probably want to make this decision because of the burden that they're carrying. Because I don't believe for one second that Justice Thomas or Justice Gorsuch or Justice Sotomayor or Roberts, I don't believe that any one of them didn't know the criminality of their institution, right? If they don't know the history of their despicable predecessors that we have to call honorable every day, if they don't know the history of them, then shame on them. But they represent an institution that has been destroying America since its inception. The very institution was created and established to preserve and protect our country by preserving the one thing that makes our country a country, and they've been undermining it and destroying it since their inception, so that they can profit off of those illegal acts. I mean, if they don't know about the despicable history of their institution, then shame on them. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And whether they know about it or not, there is no justification whatsoever for the things that they've done, right? The erosion, destruction of our country because of the decisions that they made that's intended to advance their industry, right? They've been putting into place rulings that have been fundamentally altering the Constitution of the United States, because the Constitution is designed to apply equally to everybody. It creates peace and harmony, right? It eliminates the fights because everybody is going to be treated equally, right? And it's a lack of respect that causes a lot of crime. That's well known by criminologists across the country, that if you're not respected and you don't feel, then you will oftentimes lash out. That's a lot of violent behavior originates from that. So when you think about respect is going to drive from the fact that, hey, this guy's going to be treated the same as this person, right? The law is going to be applied equally. And so the Constitution, it creates peace and harmony. So peace and harmony, though, doesn't create conflict and crime. Conflict and crime makes them and their institution a lot of money. So they don't want the Constitution to get its way, because if it did, they would all be out of a job, because the Constitution has declared that all men are to be free, and they're in the business of enslaving them. That's why, attorneys, they go through in adjudicative law. They learn about the adjudication process. All that they learn about is how to make a person into a criminal. They learn all the laws that remove freedom, statutes, ordinances, judge-made rulings, right? They learn about all those laws that remove freedom. They're not even laws, right? Because a judge-made ruling is not a law. But they learn how to remove freedom, because they're in the business of enslaving the people, right? That's what their degree is, slavery. That's why the Fugitive Slave Act, a fugitive is a slave is a fugitive. They are synonymous. Those two terms mean the same thing. A slave is a fugitive, and a fugitive is a slave. The 13th Amendment, you can't have slavery except as a punishment for crime, meaning that if you're a criminal, you're a slave. So a slave is a criminal is a slave. They're synonymous with one another. So if you have a degree in making a person into a criminal, guys, you got a degree in making a person into a slave. Therefore, you have a degree in slavery. And we got to be honest with what the fuck we're dealing with here, because that's what we're dealing with. If you're an attorney and you have a degree in adjudicative law, you have a degree in making a person into a slave. It is what it is. You have a degree in slavery. So everything that you learn, Mr. Juris Doctorate, Mr. Attorney, is every single thing that you learn is how to remove freedom, how to enslave a person. It's not the way we want to go. But yet that's what we've been following, because we've allowed the judges to slowly remove the very fundamental rights that we have, the Constitution of the United States. They have removed those rights, those liberties, and replaced them with judge-made rulings, with decisions made by slave owners to preserve and advance their institution by creating laws that remove freedom, right? Remove the freedom. And that's not the way that we were meant to go, because judges were never meant to create laws. And yet, today, they don't talk about the Constitution being the supreme law of land. You go into a courtroom and they're like, oh yeah, well, Barron is the law of land, right? Hurtado is the law of land, or Davis is the law of land. Whatever case they might want to come across is the law of land, not the Constitution. So when you go into the courtroom and you say, well, my rights have been violated, right? And you say to that judge, my rights have been, I had a right to indict by a grand jury and I was denied it. That judge is going to say, well, let me see here. And he'll go back and he'll come back and make a decision that, yes, your rights were not violated. But he's not going to base that decision on the Constitution. He's going to base that upon a judge-made ruling. He's going to go and say, oh, no, Hurtado versus California said you don't get it. Even though it says that you do, Hurtado said you don't, and we rely upon a judge-made ruling, not the Constitution. So we're going to rely upon the decisions of judges. as to whether or not you have rights. And so that means that it's not the Constitution that's the foundation, it's judge-made rulings that's the foundation. So they removed the rights to people, the obligations that they have, and they replaced it with their rulings, their decisions that they erroneously called law. And they fundamentally altered and amended the Constitution of the United States in an act of judicial fiat, as opposed to a lawful amendment in accordance with the specified procedures through an authentic act of the people. They didn't do it. And yet that's the world we live in. A world where judges, slave owners, and slave makers have created reality. And we have to live within that reality that's based upon the judge's social, political, or public policy. So, we have an opportunity right now where I think that we got to make a decision, right, as a country. If we incrementally permit them to back us out, it'll never get done. If we permit them to continue to do business as normal, even one more day, it still is unconstitutional, it's still illegal. No, what they built is flawed, right? The foundation is off. The foundation was supposed to be the bedrock of the nation, right? The Constitution of the United States was supposed to be the foundation, and they were supposed to build their system upon it, right? They were to go to it to make sure that everything complies with it, and they didn't do it. Instead, they decided that their judge-made rulings are going to be the foundation, and everybody's going to go to the judge-made rulings to determine whether or not you have a right. That if a man says that you have a right, not the people, if a judge says that you have the right, then you have it. If the judge says that you don't have it, you don't have it. It's entirely up to the judge. We live in a world where they make decisions as to what you get, what your family gets, the property that you get to have or keep, and that's not a world we're supposed to live in. Judges don't have that kind of power because we preserve our rights, because we gave them to us through the Constitution. We preserve the individual liberties of the people through intentional limiting of the powers of government. The judge does not have unlimited power. He cannot do whatever the fuck he wants to do and amend the law, step outside of a separation of powers, decide that he's going to legislate, despite the fact that the judicial branch has no authority to legislate. He's going to change the Constitution of the United States through a judicial ruling because that makes his business run more effectively and efficiently. This is not the world we were meant to live in. So when you build your courthouse upon the flawed foundation of the slavery institution and not upon the bedrock of the nation, then don't be surprised if your house falls when the storm comes. This is straight out of scripture, you guys. You build your house upon the rock, and if you build it upon the sand of slavery, then it's going to fall when it comes. Guys, we can't continue to put patches on this house, this temple of justice that they built, because they built it upside down. They built it flawed. The foundation was meant to be the Constitution. The Constitution is not there. The whole thing needs to come down, because if we just continue to patch it together, we're not going to change anything, right? It's not going to go away, and the slavery institution is still going to rear its ugly head once again somewhere down the road. And I don't want this to come back, right? The only way we can get rid of this institution is once and for all with complete finality. You rip the motherfucker out from the fucking roots and you throw it the fuck away. That means that we cannot have one single person remain in enslavement condition, not one, because if we do, then we will have a constitution that guarantees the liberty of the people, that will not be the supreme law of the land, because we will be applying it unequally amongst members of society. If we want this country to have a future that's going to be sustainable for our children and our children's children and their children, we want to have a country where we're not going to have this issue appear once again, where we're not going to have a government that can enslave the people of the United States once again somewhere down the road, then we've got to remove slavery once and for all with finality. We've got to raise every single slave up. We got to do what George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, what they were too afraid to do, because they chose greed and money over honor, right? Because they didn't do what God commanded them to do, and they built a foundation upon slavery institution when they failed to make all men fucking equal. And they failed to release their property. They didn't create a criminal justice system because it's not built upon just principles. They created a criminal enslavement system, and as a result, slavery is and always will be the foundation unless we take an opportunity right now to fix it. That's what God has presented to us. That's what we have sitting in front of us. That's what we can do. That's why this situation has presented itself in such a way to where we can literally destroy every single fucking conviction that this government has ever done. Because you know what? The government that was instituted and created to preserve the liberty of the people cannot be in the business of enslaving the people. Because by the breach of the purpose of the establishment of our government in order to enslave the people, you have nullified the whole purpose of our government's existence. That's why God has presented us with this opportunity right now. And it's going to be up to us to decide, is that the path that we want to go? Is the Constitution of the United States what we say it is? Can it do the things that it says that it can do, right? Are its words, can they be trusted, right? Those are the things that we're going to have to decide. Can we have faith in that Constitution? Can we have faith in the words that it says? Can we believe in it and know that wherever we end up is going to be the right place? Because you see, right will always produce right, wrong will always produce wrong. I don't think that there's anybody in the country, even people that haven't been oppressed by the system, that would say that we're heading in the right direction. Look at what Elon Musk is uncovering right now. We are certainly going the wrong direction. We got a whole bunch of pieces of shits that were put into office that we called honorable, like a bunch of fools we are, and what they did to us, man. They got corrupted by the power, and they destroyed this country through their greed, through their ignorance, and through their deception. And then they walk around even now today and say, we're honorable. No, you're not. You guys are a bunch of fucking criminals, right? You've led us into an area of criminality where our citizenry are all being thrown in jail and being called criminals because we're following you. You guys are a bunch of criminals. You've been leading us toward criminality. We don't want to go that way, you dumbasses. So, look at what's being uncovered, right? We are clearly going in the wrong direction. I don't think that there's anybody in the country who would disagree with that statement. And if that's true, then we are in the wrong place because we made a wrong decision along the way. We chose to take a wrong path. So when it comes to the law, you can either choose to follow it and obey it or disobey it. There's no walking, a little bit. It's black or white. It's a Duralex, Sedlex. It may be hard, but it's the law. You're either acting lawfully or you're acting unlawfully. You can't walk the line. You can't say, okay, well, we can abridge it a little bit here, right? We can take away your right to freedom, in certain instances, right? No, that's not how it works. You either preserve the freedom or you don't, right? You're either acting lawfully or you're not acting lawfully. And so at some point in time, in 1833, the Marshall Court made a decision that we're not going to follow the law, Barron v. Baltimore. And they directed every single court within the whole country in Barron v. Baltimore that you don't have to give the people of the United States the very rights that are guaranteed to them and enumerated within the Bill of Rights. You don't have to give it to them. 1833, Barron v. Baltimore. The highest court in the land decided that the people of the United States do not get what is guaranteed to them, written, that they can read. It's enumerated within the Bill of Rights. They don't get it. And ever since then, not one single person in the whole purview of the United States of America has been given the very right of the indictment by grand jury. It's never been given because that right has never been incorporated in as a restriction against states. Because in 1833, the Supreme Court came out and said, you don't have to do it. And they've never corrected that statement. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, has never came out and directed all the courts within its purview that they must do what the Constitution guarantees that the people must have. Never corrected it. And as a result, all of these state courts are all operating under the presumption of the direction from the highest court in the land, right? The highest court in the land said all of them, you don't have to do it. Highest court in the land introduced fraud in 1833 by directing all the courts in the country that they don't have to do what is required of them, that they can abridge the obligation, that they amended the Constitution of the United States and deprived the people of their rights that are guaranteed to them through an act of judicial fiat in an unlawful manner. So as a result, you guys, what we see now is that highest court in the land, until it steps up, right? And they're scared to do it. I get it, Thomas. I get it, Roberts. You guys don't want to admit that you guys haven't followed the law. That you guys are nothing but a bunch of criminals, and you're going to have to criminalize, all of your predecessors. You're going to have to tell the people of the United States the truth about Marshall and Taney and Waite and Taft and all these other pieces of shit that we have to call honorable, that you guys have put on a pedestal and, have their fucking monuments and shit, when all reality that they're just a bunch of traitors, right? that they've been undermining the laws of the United States, that they've almost destroyed us because of the desire to proliferate their greed and profit off their illegal acts. And then, you led us astray, and then when we were eyes opened to the true reality of this, then you would take us and throw us into prison and oppress us, and call us fools. And I mean, you guys have done some really, really shitty things, man. I mean, these people walk around in long black robes. They're actually kind of really big pieces of shit. There's nothing honorable about these guys. And you know what? You guys are gonna have to admit that. And I get that that's a tough thing for you to have to do, but you're gonna have to do it because the people of the United States they're gonna see the truth here. They're gonna see what you guys have done, and they're gonna see what you guys have built, and it's all just a bunch of bullshit. Judges don't make the law, and yet for our entire existence of our country, you have never followed the law. From the very beginning, the very first step has never been followed, because the highest court in the land introduced fraud and directed all the courts in the country that they don't have to follow the Constitution of the United States. And ever since then, 1833, that means that every single criminal case in every single courtroom across the entire purview of the United States are all being conducted unconstitutionally. Because no one is actually given the right to trial by jury, because you're not the president. I mean, why would they have to conduct a grand jury in the proper manner if they don't even have to do it? So instead, they're just going to set up some sham process and say, oh, yeah, there's a grand jury, when they don't even have to do that because the highest court in land said you don't have to do it. But they do it just to kind of appease people, just kind of gloss over and make it appear as though they're doing the right thing, right? Because they can make it up because they don't even have to do it anyway. The highest court in land is going to have to, they're going to have to step up, because nothing that any court is doing in this country, not one single proceeding, is constitutional. Because we all know that fraud vitiates and destroys any act, any judicial act. There is no decision or action of any court that will be valid if fraud was introduced. And fraud was introduced by the highest court in land. The ones that were supposed to be preserving, protecting, defending the Constitution of the United States from their inception has been destroying the Constitution of the United States. So every single criminal case that's happening in every single court is operating under fraudulent conditions. Absolutely. There's no denying it. So for all of you, especially the 2.9 million people, you guys need to, your family, if your family's imprisoned, they need to know about this shit. They need to know that they're sitting in prison right now on something that doesn't even have authority. It's void. It doesn't even exist. It is fraudulent. The state never had the authority to prosecute them, to establish it, to create it. Therefore, it has no force or effect on the parties involved in dispute. All 2.9 million people currently imprisoned here in America, they could stand up and lawfully walk out of that prison, and no one could even stop them lawfully. If anybody stopped, they would be murdering someone, because there is no contract, there's no judgment, there's nothing that holds those people in place. What do you think happens when slaves wake up and they decide that they don't want to be a slave anymore? When they wake up and they say, you know what, I don't have to do this shit. I have the right to be free. They wake up and they say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and be free. And they walk the fuck up out of there. You know? These institutions, they need to know this too. Not just the prisoners, but these prison guards, they need to know this shit too. Because when this day does come and these slaves decide that they're going to stand up and no longer be enslaved anymore, and they're going to reclaim their freedom, right? And they're going to restore their original liberties, which they are completely entitled to do, because there's nothing that's holding them in these institutions but their consent. When they wake up and they decide that they're no longer going to be a slave and they're going to walk themselves into freedom, because there's nothing holding them in that state of enslavement except for their fear. These guards and goons, these pieces of shit, these criminals that are unlawfully imprisoning them and kidnapping them, they need to know that they shouldn't do anything either when these slaves wake up and decide that they're going to walk themselves into the freedom that they're entitled to. You know, so when you have fraud that's introduced, when government takes action unconstitutionally, and they perform an arrest without having lawful authority to perform that arrest, Nothing after that point is going to be valid. The arrest is unconstitutional. Therefore, everything that comes from that arrest must also be unconstitutional because it is all tainted by the illegality of the way in which it was obtained. You don't have to appeal it because it's void, because it derives from an unconstitutional act. If the judgment is produced a couple months after the arrest and the arrest is unconstitutional, then there is nothing to appeal because the arrest that happened a couple months before the judgment renders it void. And a void judgment is nothing. It doesn't, you don't have to appeal it. It doesn't exist. It is completely without force or effect of the parties involved in dispute. That is Civil Rule 60B4. You don't have to challenge or appeal a void judgment because it's void. It doesn't even exist. That's why I keep telling us, you go to the beginning, you don't go to the end. Don't limit yourself to the statutory limits of an appeal, right? Don't give the government a second chance to be able to prosecute you because they fucked up the first time, you know. Don't appeal it because there's nothing to appeal. Your arrest was unconstitutional. What you're sitting in jail for, what you're sitting in trial for, what you're sitting in prison for, your post-conviction relief, none of it is valid. It's all void because of what they did to you when they committed a crime in order to arrest you by the government that had the duty and obligation to protect your liberty. They were created to preserve your liberty, and instead they decided that they were going to abridge their obligation and instead enslave you, which was not the purpose of the government. So what we have here is we have an opportunity to literally bring every single slave up to an equal status, every man, every woman, every child, every person to an equal level, and start this country over the way that George Washington should have done 243 years ago when he failed to listen and do what God was telling him that he needed to do and make all men equal. And instead he chose to keep his property because they were profitable to him. And he wanted to advance his own financial interests as opposed to do what God needed him to do, so we could have a sustainable future for this country that's established upon the equal application of all laws and all men are actually equal. And so we have to decide, what do we believe in? Do we believe in this institution that is based upon judges and what judges, put into place? Do we believe that that's the direction we want to go? Do we believe in slavery and, involuntary servitude of the weakest, most vulnerable in our society, so we can profit off of them? Or do we believe in the Constitution of the United States? And if we believe in the Constitution of the United States, then we know the direction that we're going to have to go here. We know what the outcome is going to be. And again, I don't know how we're going to get there, but what I do know is that we're going to be in the right place when we do get there, because we're going to make the right decision on the issue. Today, we're in the wrong place because we made the wrong decision on the issue. That sent us in the wrong direction. So today, we have an opportunity where we can either say, okay, we don't want to go this way because we're going to let all these people out and that's going to be bad, or we can say, you know what, I don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to make the right decision today and we're going to obey the law, and wherever we go, we know that's going to be the right outcome because it's going to be the right decision on the issue. We know that today we're in the wrong place because we made the wrong decision on the issue. I say let's go the other direction. So if we have our laws, right? Our laws may not be perfect. I would agree with the system when they say the laws aren't perfect, but before we call the law imperfect, I would first suggest let's fucking use it the way it was designed to be used. Don't blame it for our incompetence. Don't blame it for innocent suffering when we are removing the one thing that's in place to protect the innocent from having to suffer. I say let's test it. Let's at least try to use the laws the way they were designed to be used, right? The way that our founders and forefathers designed them to be used, and that is in accordance with the will of the people and not in accordance with the will of a bunch of slave owners and people with education in the slavery institution. They don't decide the future of our country, the people do. And we need to decide if we have faith in judges and the bullshit that they put into place, the reality that we live in today, that's based upon the social, political, public policy of a bunch of slave owners, or if we believe in the fundamental laws of our nation, that one law, we can rely upon it, and we can know that no matter what, we're going to reach the right destination because we're going to make sure that every single man, woman, child is treated equally, and the laws apply equally, no matter who they are, no matter what race they are, no matter what sex they are, no matter how old they are, no matter how intelligent they are. None of it matters because the laws will apply equally to every single person within our society, and that's going to produce a good citizenry because we're going to have peace and harmony amongst all of our brothers and sisters, and we're going to get rid of this bullshit of racism, this bullshit of economicism, and these other things that these very few people are imposing upon the rest of us. That's creating the dissolution of our nation. We don't believe in that bullshit any longer. There's no reason whatsoever why one human being would hate another human being. We are all perfectly equal, but utterly unique. And we will never overcome this system until we accept the fact that every single person is equally as important within our society, that President of the United States cannot do his job without the garbage man taking out his trash, and the garbage man cannot do his job without the president running our country. That doesn't make any one of them more important. It just makes them unique, because the laws are going to apply equally no matter who they are. And until we accept that, we will not live in the nation that is consistent with our beliefs and our values, or consistent with what our law demands. So that's what I want to see us do, and I need you guys' help to get there. I need your help to get there, because you know, I keep on telling you guys what I believe in. I keep telling you guys what I see. I keep telling you the vision that God has given to me, and I know that you guys are inspired by it. But I can't spread this on my own, right? I can't do it, man. I'm not getting any traction here. I can't get people to listen to what I have to say. And you know, guys, I mean, I'm sitting here, and I'm gonna be honest, like I don't know how much longer I can do this, because I don't have a car, guys. I don't have a house. I don't have a place to live. You know, 3 days ago I slept in an abandoned house because I didn't have a place to go, guys. You know, I do that because I accept the sacrifice that I have to have in order to do the things I do, right? I accept the fact that I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. I'm doing this because these people are poor and they don't have money to be able to pay. So I accept what God puts in my path. But you guys, this is not the life that I was meant to live, right? I don't have to do this, and I've got a lot of education, and I want to be able to use that education effectively. But I need people. I need the support, because I'm stuck in Oklahoma, guys. I have been here for a month now. I can't get out of here. I have no way out. I have no ride out. And when I started this 9 years ago, right? You guys can believe it, not believe it, it doesn't matter. I was making $870,000 a year with my company, my engineering firm. That's roughly $72,000 a month. I could buy anything I wanted, but I was not a good man then, all right? I was kind of a fucking piece of shit, right? And I was running away from my kids. I wasn't being a good father because I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't have one myself, so I was running away, and I was failing to be a good father to my children, right? Because I didn't know how. I was scared to do it. And so I just give them a whole bunch of money and buy them a bunch of shit, but then I'd run off and I'd go in and I do work, you know, a month someplace without, you know, because I didn't want to be a father. But when I decided that, oh no, I need to change. Like I need to be different. I still didn't know how to be a father, but it started right there, right? And this was a journey for me, you know. I mean, this is as much me becoming a man as it is me doing the work that I'm doing, because I needed to learn how to be a father. I need to learn how to be an example for my son so that he knows how to be a man. I need to be an example for my daughters so that they know this is the type of man that you should marry, because this is what a man will do. You know, I need to set that example for my kids. And I couldn't do that without this journey for my own, right? To reach my own self. But when I made the decision 9 years ago that I'm going to do this, right? When I made the decision, I decided then that I'm not going to do this for money. This became my passion. I do this because I love it, man. I love helping all of you, because this is the closest that I feel to love, you guys. Like, you know, when I went through this divorce, that hurt me so much. Like, and you know, my kids were taken, my wife, everything I had in my life was gone just instantly, and it hurt a lot. And so, you know, I've gone 9 years, you know, trying to deal with this trauma and this hurt. And I gotta say that the only time that I feel any sort of resemblance of happiness is out here helping you guys. Like that's why I do this. Like this is the only way that I feel any sort of you know, any sort of love. And so I'm out here and I'm trying to find, you know, something that I've lost. And Maybe it was bullshit to begin with, but nonetheless, I'm here because I believe in I believe in love. Like I believe in it, and I want to find it once again, and and someday I will. But that's why I do this. I do this because I love it, right? I love it. This is my passion, and I'm going to do it whether there's money in it or not, right? If I have to sleep out in an abandoned house, I'm going to do that because I love it that much, right? Even when there's no money. But it could be a lot easier, you guys, and it could be a lot quicker. You know, I don't think that a lot of people respect me, and that's unfortunate. But I don't want to charge for my services here. Everybody keeps telling me I need to start charging, and I don't want to fucking do it, man. But I need help, you guys. I need help. I've got to figure out some way to be able to go and do the things I need to do. So next week I'm supposed to meet on Monday with an advocacy group, and we're gonna try to put together some plans on, because we have some issues. The affidavit issue is an issue because right now the post offices to deliver them, right? They're refusing to deliver, and so you guys are getting them all sent back, and I know that that's discouraging, but it's all part of God's plan. But nonetheless, we've got to come up with a solution, and I don't know what the solution is quite yet. So yeah, I see you there, brother. So I'm down in I'm down in where am I at? I'm in I'm near Durant, near the Choctaw area, but and there's nothing here. That's why I've been stuck here for a month and a half. But fortunately, I got into someone's house here, so I've got a house for a week in the bedroom, so I'm good for about a week. But I've got to keep moving, guys, because power is a product of action. If I'm not moving, if I'm not out doing something, then then I'm not producing. That's the reason why you guys haven't seen me on a live for like the last 5 days, because I mean, I haven't had anything. So, it's been rough, but so what I'm looking at right now is everybody wants this training. And so I'm considering going with there's a couple other people that we're considering doing town halls. So if we have to spread this information slowly, because that's where we're at right now, guys, we're just gonna have to do this slowly. I mean, and if it's gonna have to be one person at a time or 100 people at a time, whatever, right? I've done 7 podcasts in the last couple weeks. I have 4 more podcasts in the next 3 days coming up. I have 6 more that's been up. I was going to give you a whole list of all the podcast radio interviews that I've done, so you guys can go out and find them. The thing is that these are all small, podcasters, right? I might get 1,000 views on each one of these. That's not the numbers that we want. But you know what? If that's the speed that we have to go, fine, whatever. But what I'm thinking now is that there's an awful lot of cities that I could go to, and I can go to a library, and we could reserve a conference room, and if you guys want to come, you want to meet with me, you guys want to ask questions, I'd be more than happy to do that, right? But I've got to be able to have a place to sleep at night. I got to be able to pay for the gas to get there. I can't be on the side of the street hitchhiking, because this is not the life that I'm going to be able to continue to live in, right? I'm going to have to get help, and I cannot put myself into another situation like I'm in right now, where I'm just stepping off into the unknown, just accepting it like I did this whole last year, guys. It was tough, man. I mean, yes, I did make it through, 5 trips across this country with no money, with no car, being dropped off in Des Moines, Iowa at 2:00 in the morning, not knowing anybody, and still being able to make it out of there and finish what I was intending to do on the very day and time that I intended to finish it. 40 days, 37 states, 37 delivered. I did it multiple times, but that was by God's grace. God's not giving me the grace anymore. He's telling me, don't fucking put yourself in this situation any longer. But this is where I need to be. I'm not getting the traction I need sitting here doing these lives because look, we got 35 people. This is not going to be the number because it's the same 35 people anyway. You guys are diehard on this. I get it. I appreciate it. But we've got to get these numbers up and we got to bring in new people. So the only way I can see that happening is by getting out there and going to cities and just, you know, and if 10 people show up, great. You know, if 100 people show up, great. But whoever needs to show up, they will. And I can just go city to city, you know, and we can do that. Along the same lines, we can also get these last states that are not served. I don't know how long this is going to take, guys, but it's going to take as long as it takes to inform the people of the United States, because that court is going to hear this case. It's just a matter of when, and the when is all dependent upon how many people in the United States are aware of this issue. That states are creating their own laws and abridging their duties and obligations by relying upon an inferior state law that amends the Constitution of the United States. The people of the United States need to make a decision. Is the Constitution what it says it is? And if so, then states do not have the authority to amend it. Therefore, all the laws that the states have made that are unconstitutional and all the contracts we're creating relying upon those laws are all unconstitutional. That's an easy solution. And that's the solution that we can come up with, that the Supreme Court will come to the conclusion on when they have to. But the way that we get to have to is that we need the people to be behind this, because people will be on the side of the Constitution. They'll be on the side of lawfulness. They're not going to be on the side of traitors, right? But we just have to inform them, and you know, and if we have to do that 100% at a time, whatever, you know. Whatever. So there's going to come a point in time when I'm not going to need the support anymore. When I'm not going to need you know, donations from you guys. There's going to come a point in time when we're going to reach that point, right? There's going to come a point in time when I'm going to be able to self-finance this. You know, when the news does finally, you know, want to hear from me, right? When the news does want to hear what we have to say. Right? We're not far from that. But when that happens, I'm not going to have to ask for any more support. I'm not going to have to ask for any more help. But the only options that I have is that I continue to do this full time. I continue to serve all of you, putting all my attention on this issue and not having distractions, or I'm going to have to work and I'm going to have to take my attention on surviving, you know, so I'm not out here doing these things, so that, you know. And that means that I'm not only going to be able to do this on a very small portion. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to charge any one of these people for the things I'm doing. Guys, I can help every single one of you. I know that you guys want me to come out. You want me to help you on your case. I can make your case go away. The exact same way that I'm making everyone else's case go away. But I need you guys to get behind me. Not me get behind you, but you get behind me. And I can win one fight. Not millions, but one. Because that one fight affects all of you. Because the highest court in land told that court that's prosecuting you that they don't have to do what they're lawfully obligated to do. That is a fight I can win. That fight is much more plausible than going out and trying to do motions and fight against someone that's not even going to obey the law. If you play with a scorpion and it stings, you don't blame the scorpion. You knew it was a scorpion, man. If you expect me to go out there and convince a criminal to act lawfully, don't be surprised if it acts criminally. You knew what it was. It's a criminal. So we can't play with the judges, right? We can't expect them to act lawfully because we know what they are. They're criminals. So don't go to a criminal and ask a criminal to obey the law. We need to go to a criminal's boss. We need to say, criminal's boss, do you want to be a criminal? And if so, tell 330 million people that you're a criminal and that you're not going to obey the laws that they created that give you your authority. And if you do want to say that to 330 million people, then good luck getting home. That's the fight we need to win, because that fight is going to make all these criminals either be a criminal or turn and act lawfully, because their leaders are going to turn and act lawfully. We only need to win one fight, guys. We only need to win one. We don't got to win all the ones out at the edge, and we don't got to appeal anything. All you guys that are sitting in prison that have already been through the adjudication process, that believe that and have accepted your fate in this reality, you need to just wake up and realize that there is nothing at all that's keeping you in that place. Nothing. Any act of government, any action of a court that derives from a failure or a lack of jurisdiction is void. Civil Rule 60b-4. A judgment is either valid or void. It's valid in all instances except for when the court rendering a decision lacks either subject matter jurisdiction or personal jurisdiction. If it lacks either one of those two things, it is a void judgment, and a void judgment is always and forever void. It can never become valid because a court can never obtain jurisdiction when it lacks jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is the first duty of the court. And if the court doesn't have jurisdiction, because the Supreme Court of the United States has introduced the fraud, and by that fraud it vitiates any action in that court, then there's nothing to challenge. You're not being held there. There's nothing that's holding you in that place other than your fear. And a bunch of goons with guns. All right? All right, so be quiet and read the comments, okay? All right, so what do we do about the affidavits? Guys, again, all the post offices are all returning. So I think that what's going to be, I don't want to continue to have people send affidavits out and have them returned, because it's already, there's enough people that have already lost faith in this, right? And we know that that's what the system's trying to do. You know, they're more than happy to turn these back, because in doing so, they know it's going to turn people off, right? All part of their plan. So I think that we just need to hold on site, because what's important right now, I think, is people understanding the issue, right? So yes, I need the affidavits. Yes, I have a number that I want to reach. And yes, we're going to reach that number. But there's a lot of people that still need to hear about what I have to say. There's a lot of people that still need to hear it, because the information is not being spread as fast as it needs to. So instead of me focusing on affidavits, because that's the outcome, I think I need to focus more on message, right? How can I deliver this message more? How can I tell more people, right? And the only way I see that is by being out on the road, right? The only way I see that is by getting out there and action, you know, producing the power from that. So, you know, I know that a number of people have already asked for me to come to their cities. I mean, you know, if I drive to St. Louis and we set up a conference room, you know, it's very low overhead, guys. It doesn't cost much. But once I get there, you know, I mean, a day we can do training, we can run through, I can answer whatever questions. And what I've found is that people will donate, you know, when it's face to face. They don't really like to donate, you know, when I'm not there, right? But I believe that if I'm face to face with people and they're meeting me, I believe that they're going to be much more inclined to help me out and to make sure that I have the things I need to be able to accomplish this. And so I think it would be much better right now. I think that's what I need to do. And so I've got at least one other person that's prepared to come, and he wants to get trained up on this. And I think we're going to have a couple others, but nonetheless, I think that's probably what we're going to do. And so I've already started a flyer. I started doing it last night. And next week, you know, I'm going to probably start in the first state to the south of where I'm at now. And we'll see how it works this first week. After that, we're probably going to go across the south. You know, they need a lot of help. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and then head up the mid-Atlantic, because we still have to serve Maryland. We still have to get up into Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. We have to get those states served, and then we still need to get West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So I kind of think we're going to be looking at a loop right here. And as long as I have what I need to be able to do it, I will stay on the road, guys. You know, this is the life that I've accepted. I mean, and I will continue to do this, but I can't continue to do it where I'm walking. So I need you guys' help to do it. All right, that's what I'm asking for. So we're going to hold on the affidavits. I'm going to continue to push it. We can still download it, but what I'm going to focus on right now is just getting the message out there. Again, I've got 4 podcasts that's coming up just in the next 3 days. So tomorrow night I have the probate trap at 8 p.m. Thursday, I've got Second Chance podcast at 1:30. Friday, I've got the Bearded Dad at 11 a.m. Saturday, I have Hashing Out the Law at noon. So that's going to round out the rest of this week. So we have 4 more. Cash App is We Shall Be Free. That's WESHALLBEFREE. We Shall Be Free. There is no other Cash App that applies. Anybody else brings you it. It is not my Cash App. They are not a part of the tour. That's the only Cash App that we have. We Shall Be Free. So then on March 3rd, I also have My Sixth Sense. There's another 6 podcasts that I'm already talking to. Guys, I just did Liberty Libations just the other day. You guys can get it on Podchaser. You guys can get it on Apple Podcasts. You can get it on Amazon, so on. Liberty Libations. It's a pretty good interview, right? Especially at the end, when you listen to their commentary at the end, they started out, after I got off the line, they were like, oh, well, I'll take things that will never happen for 1,000, Alex. That was what they said. Yeah, I mean, at first glance, this seems like it's impossible, right? But when you look at it from a much broader perspective, and you look at it from a much more spiritual perspective, what you'll see is that this is the path that leads our country to reconciliation. This is what we should be doing anyway, because this is leading us in a lawful direction. This is leading the country away from the unlawful behavior of our leaders and our founders and forefathers when they led us into a condition of slavery because they didn't do what they said that they believed in. And so, this makes sense then, but it also makes sense because this is what the law says, right? This is what the law, all we're saying is let's follow the law, right? And who could disagree with that, right? So, even those guys that said, oh yeah, well, I'll take things that will never happen for 1,000, they even at the end, they were like, well, you know what? I mean, this could actually happen. Like right now, it seems like the right time. I mean, think about the conditions as well in our country. We've got an administration that comes in that wants to destroy the corruption, but they're focused on what I would say is the wrong thing. And maybe they're going to hear this, right? And maybe they're going to realize that, yeah, maybe we should focus on the needs of the people. Maybe we should focus on what we're doing wrong as government, as opposed to, how do we make more money, right? Because the money doesn't matter, right? What matters is the needs of the people, right? That's what the Constitution is about. The Constitution doesn't give a fuck about the money. The Constitution gives a fuck about the people. So, if this administration decides that they want to put the Constitution back in its foundation, that's an easy thing to do, but the outcome's not easy. So it's not going to include an expansion of private prison contracts. It's not going to include the death penalty happening once again. It's not going to include a continued operation of business as normal. It's going to have to do something vastly different than what they're doing today, and that means that they're going to have to bring in a different set of expertise than the one that they've traditionally been listening to. If you surround yourself around a bunch of attorneys and all they know how to do is enslave and follow judge-made rulings, then don't be surprised if we continue down the same path that we're on. You need some new expertise. Now, I'm praying that the new administration, that Mr. Trump will get that expertise that he needs so that he can get a balanced understanding of the Constitution from the perspective of enslavement versus setting free, substantive versus adjective. So, the thing is that even though this seems impossible, all we're saying to do is let's follow the law. That's all we're asking for, man. And that I don't think is asking too much. So that's why I say to you guys, like, what if we do follow the law, right? What if they do decide to be honorable, right? Then we win, right? Then we win. We get our rights back. We get our freedoms back. All of the things that they've done to us, all the things they've stolen from us, our children, our families. It's all restored to whatever state they can actually restore it without a time machine, right? But we get our character back, we get our honor back, we get our innocence back. Those things that they took from us without lawful authority, we get those things back and they return us to the state of original liberty. We get our lives back, we get our children and their lives back, because all of that was taken without lawful authority. And all we're saying is just follow the law. Because the law goes both directions. It applies to you, government, as well as us. And let's just follow it. That's not asking too much. So Liberty Libations, you guys can get that on PodSource. I've got 2 different podcasts that I did with Professor Butran, Gloves Off. Those are pretty good. I like the first one, but he's a good, excellent interviewer out of San Antonio area. Eye of the Storm, that's probably one of my favorites, guys. That you can get that on Rumble. Eye of the Storm. If you guys haven't heard that one, that was around this time last year. And I talk a lot about some of the stuff that we're actually seeing happening right now. Where I said in that was right before I left to go start serving the attorney generals. And I said that that these public officials, they need to know that as of this moment they're on notice, right? And that's exactly what we did. We went out and we served notice on them. All the attorney generals, every single one of them, were provided notice. All of the Supreme Courts provided notice. So all these public officials were provided notice, just like I said I was going to do in that podcast. So, when you guys, there's some people that like to say that I don't do what I say that I do. I would disagree. I do everything I say that I'm going to do. I just may not do it at the exact time that I say that was going to be done, but I do the best I can. I also did an interview with Prison Pipeline Radio. That's on WRRO out of Portland. It was a great interview. That was about 2 years ago that I did it. One with People Power Radio. That is, you can get it off my Facebook page. That's with the great Mr. Mike Washington out of Oklahoma City here. Mike Washington, if you're on here, you're an amazing guy. I appreciate being your friend. But that was an excellent interview. That was one of the first ones that I did, and that one was really funny because they were very suspicious of me coming in, and by the time we were done, they understood, a lot of the tactics of the system, and you can actually hear their voice in it. I did one with Sonova Cantrell. She's a Discovery Channel personality. That was an excellent one. We did it mostly over Chevron. So if you guys want to know about Chevron, what it was, what it's about, go and listen to the interview that I did with Sonova Cantrell. That is on Rumble. It's also on YouTube and I believe also Facebook. You guys know Thomas Freemy out of Florida. I did a series with him. I think it was seven series podcast. 4 of them are video. The rest are audio only, but you can get them on YouTube. Look up Thomas Freemy. I also did Rescue the Fosters. That's on YouTube and Rumble. So Rescue the Fosters, I think I did 3 different podcasts with them. Insight as well. That's with Gino. So Insight, I did one with them. Space Shot 76, that's off of Rumble as well. You guys, I did an interview with Space Shot 76. Slam the Gavel, we have one with them as well. And then, like I said, we have 6 or 7 more that's coming up. So, guys, there's lots and lots of content that's out there. You guys want to know about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. There's more than enough information for you guys to have. So, I think I have poured out everything I know to you guys, and that way, if something happens to me, at least the information is there. Okay. So one thing that we started doing here recently was we started testing these courts, and so for instance, Joseph up in New Hampshire. So we need to know when the court is ready to receive our petition, right? The Supreme Court. We're not going to know that the time is right until we can start seeing the system start changing its behavior. Because as long as the judges out here are refusing to acknowledge the jurisdictional argument that we have, then it's not going to do us any good to go to the boss, right? So what we're doing right now is we're submitting motions to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction. Basically, the argument that we have with Supreme Court that, hey, if the state is named a party, then the state can't be the judge in the case. That's going to be our argument for the Supreme Court. But we don't want to take the Supreme Court until we know that the time is right, because everything is about timing right now. So, I've already submitted to a few states. There's a couple more that I'm doing, and I'll be working with some of you guys over, as I come across the country. But we want to be submitting these motions for people that are going through the process right now. Right? So if you've been charged with a crime, we want to get a motion out there. We want to submit it to the judge, and we want to see, because once we start seeing them respond, right? Once we start seeing them perhaps even dismiss, then we know that now it's starting to funnel out. Now is the time to be able to submit to the high court. But we can't submit, prematurely, right? And so we got to gauge this. We got to make sure it's right. So, one thing that I've already got the motion written. I want to improve it just a little bit, which I'm going to try to do with one that I'm going to be submitting here soon in Oklahoma with an individual. But I'm going to get that motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction under the Article 3 argument. that, in all cases which the state shall be party, Supreme Court has original jurisdiction. That means that that the state judge, hey, state is a party to the cause right here, and as a result, judge, you need to recuse yourself. Failure to do so means you're acting out of jurisdiction, and so on. Right now, today, Joseph, he submitted one of those up in New Hampshire. And he submitted it to the United States District Court, and the District Court remanded it back down to state court and said, oh, no, state has jurisdiction. So as of this moment, we do not have action yet. It's not the right time because the District Court has refused to acknowledge that argument. So we got to continue to wait. I don't know how long it's going to take, but all we can do is continue to test the system and wait for that moment that we see that there's a response. Once we see a response, then we know now it's the time to submit. So I'll have this motion done. It'll be ready. You guys, I think we'll probably have it out on the website, and you guys will be able to download it. And if you guys want to submit it, then you guys would be welcome to do it. But the whole point is that I need to know what the response was. I mean, if you guys submit one of these to your court and you get a response back and it's a no, you guys need to let me know, because the whole point here is that we need to be able to gauge the system. Because once we see a different reaction from the lower court judges, that is because the higher court judges are reacting differently, right? So these followers are following their leader, and so we can understand what the top is doing based upon the behavior of the bottom, okay? But we got to test it. So we'll need to work together, all of us, to go to these states and to continually test this until we see a response. And once we see a response, then we know that it's time to act on the high court. Okay, we're all ready to go on the high court, but it's all about timing, you guys. We don't want to go prematurely. And in the meantime, all we can do is increase the awareness, because the awareness is going to add the pressure onto the judges. They know this is true, you guys. They know it, but they're not going to respond, and they're not going to act lawfully until they're required to act lawfully. So as long as the people of the United States, believe that they're good and is permitting them to act unlawfully, then they're going to continue to do it. So all we can do is just continue to raise awareness, and eventually, it will reach a point where the scales will tip in our favor, and now we'll start to see responses from the judges, and all we can do is just continue to test it. Okay. Absolute immunity. I don't want to talk about that now. So earlier today, someone was talking to me about children, right? And there's some decisions that are out there that children are property of the parents, right? And that would be how they would be seen, right? So children are property of the parents, and government can't interfere with your private property. But the problem is that when you're in a pro se status, right? Pro se means that you're a minor, right? You're a minor. You're a minor to the state because you've changed your legal relationship with the state. You've entered into various different contracts with the state. So you got a driver's license, you got a marriage license, you got a bank, and you got a house, and all these things that change your legal relationship with the state. And now you're under the state's authority, right? And so as a result, now you're pro se. And being pro se means that you can't go into that courtroom of your own volition and negotiate the terms of a contract, because in order to do so, you would have to breach the contracts that you entered into with the state. So that's where the prosecutor comes into place, right? The prosecutor is there to negotiate the terms of the contract for the breached party. So, when you enter into a contract with the state, you agree that you're going to abide by the state driving laws, and you get a driver's license. Whether you meant to or not is irrelevant, but you got it. And now you have agreed that you're going to obey the state driving laws. Thus, you change your legal relationship with the state. You didn't have to get a driver's license because you had the right to travel, right? But you entered into it because of, the state told you that you needed to. So I don't read comments, because if I read comments, then it gets me off track. So I try not to until the end. So if you change your legal relationship with the state, and now you're subject to the state driving laws, and the state driving law is 60 miles an hour, and you're out driving 70 miles an hour, well, now you've agreed that you would obey it, and as a result of the breach of the contract, right, now you can be held accountable for the breach. And so now you have to come into the courtroom, and you have to negotiate the terms of the breach of contract. But you can't negotiate on your own because you're a minor. Minors can't enter into a contract of their own, so you need someone to do it for you, right? A sui juris, right? That's what sui juris means. It means of one's own volition. So sui juris means that you don't have contracts that you would have to breach to negotiate the terms of contract. You can't speak directly with the court because you're a minor, right? So they have to bring in someone else to negotiate the terms of contract for you, and that's one of the reasons why when you swear an oath as a prosecutor, you're a foreign entity because you have to remove all those contracts. Now, I did it naturally. It's a pain in the ass. That's why I don't have a house. That's why I don't have a wife. That's why I don't have, kids and a job and bank account, because I had to do it normally, right? I had to remove all those contracts so that I have no contracts whatsoever. And that way I can walk into a courtroom and I can negotiate the terms of a contract on my own volition because I am sui juris, right? And in order to sue anyone, you must be sui juris, right? You can't sue unless you are sui. And so, that's where the prosecutor comes in, because as long as you guys have contracts with the state, you're a minor of the state. The state is your parent, right? It's your guardian. And as your guardian, then just like you have your children as your property, well, unfortunately, you are the state's property. And that's why the state can take away your property, right? They can take away your children because you remain in a state of a minorship with a guardian, of a custodial relationship with the state. One of the first things we got to do is we've got to remove ourselves from these minor status. And unfortunately, that's it. It's going to take some work because, when you remove your driver's license and you say, well, I don't have to have it, and I'm not gonna do it. I mean, if you're going to claim to be free, you're going to have to act like you're free, and restoring your freedom is going to come at a cost. But it's only going to be a cost until enough people step up and reclaim their freedom. So when government puts us into a state of enslavement, and they remove the freedoms and rights of the people, and we don't have the ability to be able to develop our own self and become who we were meant to be, then the government has put themselves into a state of war against the people. And according to John Locke and Thomas Jefferson and Jacques Rousseau and the rest of our founding philosophers, that when this happens and the government is in a state of war against the people, that we have the right to abolish our obedience to the government and restore our original liberties. Right? And what does that mean? Well, even George Washington said in his farewell address, he said the very right and duty of the people to establish government presupposes the duty of every individual to obey the established government. So we have the right to establish government, but what's even more important than that is our ability to not obey the established government when they are failing to govern us in the way that we demand, the way that we establish. You see, the laws that apply to us, they require our obedience, right? So government creates laws to make us obedient. Well, our requirement to obey the government is only valid so long as government is governing us consistent with the way that we established, because they have obligations as well. So when government breaches its obligations and govern us in a way other than what is prescribed, what is lawful, then by their breach of obligation, we have the right then to breach our requirement to obey that established government, and we can restore our original liberty. But in restoring our original liberty, it doesn't mean that we're going to go out and start, assaulting and stealing from each other. It means that we're going to say, I'm free now, and I'm going to act free. And that means I'm going to go and have a car, and I'm going to drive that car without license plates because I don't have to, because that's my personal property. And I'm going to not have a driver's license because I don't have to have one. But I am going to subject myself willfully to those laws because I care about my fellow man and the safety of my fellow man. But I will not be subject to those laws. I will willfully obey them, but I will not be subject to them. And those are two completely different things. Government wants you to be subjected to the laws. We don't have to be subjected to any state laws because they have no authority to be able to govern us, because we live in a domain outside of the limited or statutory governance of a state. A state is within the nation, and we, as a person of the United States, a citizen of the United States, we reside outside of the state's limited or statutory governing limits. We can't confine ourselves within the state because we reside outside of the states as a federal entity. The people of the United States established the state. The state didn't establish the people. But in order for us to reach that point and restore original liberties, we must act as though we're free, and we must do that without fear. So, until we have enough people step up, we are going to continue to be in a state of danger. But if you want to be able to to have your children, right? Have your property and not have your property taken, then you're gonna have to stand up and you're gonna have to take your property back. And that's gonna be by removing all of the things that you've done to subject yourself to the state and its authority. All those laws, all those things that you did, all those contracts that you made, you're gonna have to remove them. And it's a difficult way to live because I don't have, an address and I don't have, those things. But unfortunately, if you want to be free, then you can't be under contract. If you want to be able to negotiate your own contract without having a prosecutor there to negotiate the terms for you, if you want to be able to walk in and have a conversation with the judge and have him be required to listen to you and communicate with you, then you must be sui juris. You must be able to negotiate the terms of your contract of your own volition. And that means that you can't have any contracts that you would breach in order to come in and negotiate that contract. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be done. It took me many, many years, about 4 years to do it. But if you guys want to be free, then that's going to be the first thing that you guys are going to have to do is you're going to have to start backing out of these contracts that you put into place and restore your original liberty and become free once again. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go to bed. So thank you guys so much. Please continue to like, follow, share. Please comment if you can. Please donate if you can. Again, we need the money. So, but I'm going to continue to do this, guys. I mean, I can't change what I'm doing and who I am. There's no way in hell that that I could go back to my life now. I would never be able to look at my kids and say, well, I almost did it. So again, death or that army retreats. Those are the only ways out for me. So if you guys can, if you guys believe in what I'm doing, if you guys want to get behind it, don't get behind me, but get behind what I am fighting for, because that's something we can all fight for. Constitution of the United States, it is what it says that it is, and it can do the things that it says it can do, as long as we all have faith in it, believe in it, and fight for it. And in doing so, we will preserve this country. So thank you guys so much. God bless. Have a great rest of your night, okay? Thank you. Thanks, YouTube. God bless, guys.